Chapter 3755. After Chu-ho knitted the scarf for Gu Jinglian, Gu Jinglian put it on before the weather turned cold. Everyone in the Gu family was surprised when he put on the scarf. It was only autumn, and the weather had just turned cold. Gu Jinglian put on a thick scarf, shocking many people, until Xiao Bao saw it. Thus, Xiao Bao started arguing with Chu-ho. "Why does Daddy have a scarf, but I don't? Mommy, didn't you say that you were going to knit a scarf for me?" Xiao Bao was a little angry. He had thought that Chu-ho's first scarf was for him, but when he saw Gu Jinglian put it on, he was very jealous. Chu-ho comforted him. "Don't you have a few scarves?" "But I want to wear the one that Mommy knit for me." Xiao Bao said coquettishly, "If Mommy knits a scarf for me, Xiao Bao will wear it every day. Even if it's hot in summer, I won't take it off." Chu-ho was speechless. They were indeed biological children. Both father and son's answers were the same. Chu-ho coaxed, "Okay, I promise to knit a hat for you, okay?" Xiao Bao nodded when he heard this. "Okay, I like a green one. It's best if it's lake green. Even the color of an apple will do. Green. Wait." Chu-ho's eyelids twitched. "A green hat? Yeah, what's wrong?" Xiao Bao obviously didn't understand the deeper meaning of a green hat, so he said, "Actually, it's fine if it's not green. A blue one looks good too. I like green and blue." Puffed. Chu-ho didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so he said, "Then I'll knit a blue hat for you." "Okay." In the evening, Chu-ho held back her laughter and told Gu Jinglian about how Xiao Bao had pestered her to knit a green hat for him in the afternoon. Gu Jinglian's face turned ashen when he heard this. "Cuckold, Xiao Bao likes green, didn't you know?" Chu-ho continued, "He especially likes green, blue, and purple. But how can this hat be made in green? He doesn't understand the origin of this." Gu Jinglian was disgusted. Why was his son so stupid? It was hard to imagine that this was Gu Jinglian's son. It must be fake. "Does this blue look good?" Chu-ho began to pick a ball of wool, hesitating between the lake blue and bluish gray. Gu Jinglian said, "Lake blue looks better. It suits him." "Yes." Chu-ho picked the color and started to needle. Recently, she seemed to have become more and more addicted to knitting. She had ordered several books on knitting from the bookstore and was learning the ropes every day. She was enjoying it. Gu Jinglian leaned against the headboard and watched as she knitted back and forth. After training with the scarf, she was now much more adept at knitting. She was considered smarter, so she learned everything faster. Other than her low EQ, she was very enlightened in other aspects. Gu Jinglian snorted coldly and reminded her, "It's late. Time to sleep." "There are still a few more needles. I'll be done soon." Gu Jinglian didn't allow her to explain. He took the needles from her hands and placed them on the bedside table. He hugged her and comforted her. "You're not allowed to knit anymore." "Okay." Since he had already said so, she could only obediently let him cover her with the blanket and turn off the lights. Gu Jinglian hugged her and said, "Good night." "Good night." Chapter 3756. On the day of the party, Chu-ho had completely forgotten about this matter. It was not until he called to ask where she was that she remembered this matter. Chu-ho packed the wool and steel needles and was ready to go out. Gu Jinglian happened to be at home. He was a little surprised to see her suddenly preparing to go out when she was knitting a hat. "Where are you going?" "Oh, I'm going to a friend's party." "A friend's party?" Gu Jinglian looked at her suspiciously. "You have friends?" Of course I have friends." "Oh." Gu Jinglian pretended not to care and asked, "Male or female friends?" "They're both women." Chu-ho said again, "Why? Are you checking on me?" "I'm just asking." Gu Jinglian snorted awkwardly. "You're not going to bring me?" "They're all female friends." Why should I bring you? Chuho smiled. Don't tell me you're worried about me? Gu Jinglian smiled. Huh. Who would have thought that the former top anti-mafia inspector of Interpol, a heroine among women, would actually attend a women's party like an ordinary woman? Chuho said unhappily. What do you mean? Can I attend? Can't I be like a woman? Sure. Gu Jinglian raised his eyebrows. I'll send you there. No need. I'll just ask Uncle Fu to send me a car. Gu Jinglian was a little angry when he heard this. He was kind enough to send her there, but she did not appreciate it. I'm worried that you're pregnant, and there's no one to take care of you. It's inconvenient. Stupid woman, you don't appreciate it? Chuho frowned. Although she was used to this guy's awkward personality, she still felt a little uncomfortable. Since you want to send me there so much, don't be so awkward. If you don't want to send me there, then stay at home obediently and don't follow me. After Chuho finished speaking, he strode away. When Gu Jinglian heard this, he was momentarily embarrassed. However, he was still worried that she would go to a gathering alone with her pregnant belly. So he shamelessly followed her. Chuho glanced at him from the corner of his eye and smiled helplessly. She had to admit that this man was like a child in some ways. He was too childish. However, seeing that he still followed her shamelessly, she turned around and made a few rules. You can come with me, but you can't enter the private room. Why? There are so many women. It's not good for a man like you to go, right? What's wrong with that? In short, if you can't agree, then don't send me there. Gu Jinglian was afraid of her. Okay, I'll stay in another room. Yes. Gu Jinglian drove her to the self-service coffee shop. This self-service coffee shop was one of the more commoner places in the city. The party was split evenly. Chuho had already used WeChat to transfer the fees to them. When they arrived at the self-service coffee shop, Gu Jinglian went to park the car. Chuho entered the shop first and gave the number of the private room, but was stopped by the waiter. Pay the bill first. Ah, those friends didn't pay for me? No, there were a total of 10 people in the private room. They only paid 400 yuan. They didn't pay for you. 40 yuan per person. Thank you. Chuho was a little embarrassed. How could it be? Why didn't they pay for her? Didn't they say that they would book the heads first? She did not bring money. Can I pay on WeChat? Chapter 3757. She paid the bill and was led to the private room by the waiter. When she opened the door, she saw a group of people sitting in the private room. When they saw her, one of them stood up and walked over to her, saying, Chuho, right? I'm AI Shui, the one who added you to the group. AI Shui had met her during the prenatal checkup and had added her to the group. However, they had not met since then. Although AI Shui had suggested that they go for the prenatal checkup together, the timing did not match, so they had not met. Come, have a seat. Everyone has been waiting for you for a long time. Chuhi sat down in her seat and asked curiously, Is no one paying my bill? Luckily, I still have some money in my WeChat account. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to get in. When everyone heard this, they looked at each other. AI Shui immediately asked, Who's in charge of paying? Everyone looked at a woman sitting in the corner. When the latter heard this, she smiled and said, Hey, I thought she wasn't coming. That's why I didn't pay. Chuho said, I didn't say that I would pay. It's just that we agreed to pay together. You should have paid for me. There was nothing wrong with what she said. Since the bill had been paid in advance, it should have been settled beforehand. When the woman heard this, she became a little sarcastic. She was obviously angered by her words, but she restrained her anger and said, You speak as if I care about your 40 yuan. You came so late. Who knew if you were coming? Isn't it just 40 yuan? I'll transfer it to you. There's no need for that. Chu Ho could not be bothered to take the money. 40 yuan was not a lot of money. It was just a matter of principle that had to be made clear. She was more concerned about the matter of principle. When the woman heard this, she felt even more upset. When Chu Ho said this, it made her seem as if she was very calculative. AI Shui quickly tried to smooth things over. Aya, we'll settle the bill later. However, Chu Ho, you're really too much. How could you forget about today's gathering? I have to criticize you for that. Chu Ho smiled. I've been taking care of the baby at home, so I forgot the date. I thought it was Friday. Aren't you going to work now? Chu Ho replied, Yeah, I'm not working. Hey, you're only 5 months pregnant. When I was 5 months pregnant, I was still working. Chu Ho said, I used to work as a police officer. Because I was pregnant, I couldn't go out on missions, so I decided to take maternity leave. Everyone sighed. Civil servants are really good. That's right. When I was pregnant, I applied for maternity leave from my supervisor. In the end, she said that I could only apply for maternity leave after 8 months. I endured until 8 months before I went home to rest. Me too. I used to be a customer service employee. I had to look at the computer every day, and I had to deal with those customers on trivial issues. It was really annoying. I'm so envious of Chu Ho. Won't your husband say anything if you stay at home? Chu Ho was a little confused. What will he say? For example, staying at home all day, not working, not earning money, and not doing housework. Chu Ho pursed his lips. It was Gu Jinglian's request to rest at home. In fact, she had already quit her job. Gu Jinglian had forced her not to work as a police officer. She thought about it and felt that the salary was really nothing to Gu Jinglian. Moreover, she was pregnant with twins, so the entire Gu family valued it very much. Therefore, she simply agreed to rest at home so that they would not have to worry about her. Chapter 3758. However, she really didn't know how to do any housework. In the past, when she was taking care of Xiaobao alone, she only knew the basics. Moreover, the Gu family was so big, and there were so many servants, so she didn't need to do much. Chu Ho didn't say anything. She only said, My husband doesn't need me to do any housework. As soon as she said this, the group of people's expressions changed. I'm so envious. It's good to have a husband who dotes on you. My husband will scold me if I don't filter the water properly. You really can't compare people. AI Shui asked, Chu Ho, where's your husband? He's outside. Why didn't you let him in? That's not good, is it? He's a man. So what? Just let him in. Chu Ho smiled. There's really no need. He can't continue the conversation, so I let him wait for me in another private room. It's fine. AI Shui was a little depressed. There were so many people who wanted to see how handsome Chu Ho's husband was. If Chu Ho didn't let her husband come out, others would think that she was bragging. Chu Ho was busy asking her for advice. I want to knit a hat for my little one. Do you think this is right? AI Shui had just picked it up to look when someone beside her said, strangely, can't you just buy a hat? It's too tiring to knit one yourself. I won't be happy if it's you. Hats aren't expensive anyway. Chu Ho said, it's better to buy one than to knit one yourself. My husband wants me to knit one for him. My little one thinks that the one I knit is ugly and refuses to wear it. AI Shui explained to Chu Ho. Chu Ho had just finished knitting when AI Shui urged again, Chu Ho, why don't you let your husband come along? It's so boring to leave him alone in the private room. There are so many of us. We can at least chat and exchange ideas. Chu Ho thought about it and decided not to. No, he's not very good at getting along with others. Gu Jinglian might not buy it. With his personality, if others angered him, he would not give them any face. AI Shui looked a little embarrassed. Someone said, Chu Ho, your husband is not someone who can't be seen. Didn't Mei Jia in the group say that your husband must be very ugly? Hee, let us see it with our own eyes. We will testify for you. Chu Ho said, is looks that important? I'm not from the Appearance Association. Aren't you with your husband because he's handsome? It has nothing to do with being handsome. Chu Ho continued, I'm with him because he's like a man. Men were different from women. Although this world believed in women's rights, men were naturally stronger than women. Therefore, they had to bear heavier responsibilities. Being like a man was a simple problem that many men could not achieve. What she liked about Gu Jinglian was that he was responsible and had the courage of a man. Although his personality was very awkward, he was two-faced and soft-hearted, but he had a sharp tongue. The two of them often bickered, but there was no doubt that Gu Jinglian would protect her. Ai Shui said, Chu Ho's husband dotes on her a lot. Ha ha, he's tall and handsome, but he doesn't look easy to get along with. I think he's a very cold person. Cold? Yeah, he doesn't smile and looks a little murderous. Ha ha, is it stupid or murderous? Chapter 37:59. Chu Ho's cell phone suddenly rang. She glanced at the screen. It was Gu Jinglian. She had just answered the call when Gu Jinglian said unhappily, come over and pay for me. Don't you have money on you? Yeah. He never had the habit of bringing money with him when he went out. Chu Ho snorted and said, then what about your WeChat? Or Alipay would be fine too. I don't use these things. Chu Ho was disgusted. This guy was too outdated. What era was this? Although she had only learned how to use WeChat not too long ago. Chu Ho stood up. Ai Shui immediately said, I'll pay for it. No need, I have my own. Chu Ho stood up and walked to the front desk. Gu Jinglian stood tall at the front desk. The waiter standing beside him was trembling in fear. He was obviously intimidated by Gu Jinglian's aura. What a terrifying man. His aura was so strong. When Chu Ho paid for him, Gu Jinglian said, give me a private room. Sir, less than 5 people are not allowed to sit in a private room. If you want, you have to pay the room fee. It's 400 yuan. Gu Jinglian glanced at Chu Ho and asked, did you bring money? I don't have that much. Usually when she went out, someone would pay for her. She also didn't have the habit of bringing red packets. The money in her WeChat was obtained from snatching red packets in the group chat. Chu Ho said helplessly, you can sit in the same room as me. When Gu Jinglian heard this, he was satisfied. When Gu Jinglian followed Chu Ho into the private room, a group of people was whispering. However, when they saw Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho walk in after opening the door, everyone was shocked when they saw this man. What a handsome man. His aura was so intimidating. He wasn't just handsome. He was so handsome that he didn't look like a mortal. For a moment, words couldn't describe him. She didn't know who had mentioned it, but Ai Shui seemed to have mentioned that Gu Jinglian and Gu Xingzi looked similar. Could it be that they were related in some way? Indeed, they did look alike, especially the eyebrows and eyes. They were 80% similar. Gu Xingzi, it was unknown who had mentioned this name. Gu Jinglian heard her and glanced at her coldly. He frowned. What did you say? Oh, no. That person blushed and immediately said, I used to like a male celebrity called Gu Xingzi. I realized that you look quite similar to him. Gu Jinglian's eyes darkened. You're not allowed to mention his name. The name Gu Xingzi was taboo in the Gu family. In fact, no one knew that the name Gu Xingzi was taboo to Gu Jinglian because of the guilt and self-blame in his heart. Gu Jinglian was initially very repulsed by this younger brother of his. However, later on, he realized that Gu Xingzi had no intention of fighting with him for the power of the Gu family. He gradually let down his guard against him. In fact, as an illegitimate son, Gu Xingze didn't do anything wrong. However, the reason why Gu Jinglian used to be a thorn in his side and a thorn in his flesh was because Gu Jinglian didn't want the power of the Gu family to fall into the hands of an illegitimate son. Later on, Gu Jinglian didn't hold any grudges against Gu Xingze. However, he couldn't accept Gu Xingze's death. He didn't deserve to die. If he had insisted on sending him to the airport back then, none of this would have happened. Chapter 3760. He didn't want anyone to mention this name again. However, Gu Jinglian's tone obviously frightened everyone. The woman was a little unwilling to be yelled at, but she didn't dare to say anything in front of Gu Jinglian. After Gu Jinglian sat down in the private room, for some reason, the atmosphere was a little tense. It was a little awkward. These people were chatting enthusiastically just now, and even encouraged Chu Ho to bring Gu Jinglian into the private room. However, when Gu Jinglian really entered the private room, they didn't dare to say anything. They didn't dare to say anything. This man sat there like a big iceberg. Later, Chu Ho also sensed that the atmosphere was not right and found an excuse to leave early. As soon as Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho left, the others began to whisper, "Who is Chu Ho's husband? He seems to have a strong aura. I feel that he is either rich or noble. I heard from Chu Ho that she doesn't have to do anything at home. It seems that her husband must be very rich. I remember. Her husband is called Gu Jinglian," Ai Shui said. I asked Chu Ho her name, but I noticed that she doesn't call him husband. Instead, she calls him by his name. "What is it? Gu Jinglian? What did you say?" Before Ai Shui finished speaking, someone stood up excitedly. "Gu Jinglian? Yes, if I remember correctly, that should be his name." "You must have remembered wrongly." That person immediately said, "It can't be Gu Jinglian. Do you know who Gu Jinglian is?" Ai Shui shook her head in confusion. "Then, do you know the Gu family in the capital?" "Yes. The head of the Gu family is Gu Jinglian. The Gu family in the capital is a super-rich family, not inferior to the former Mu family at all. Now, they are also on par with the Shengyu Financial Group. The Shengyu Financial Group was founded by Mu Yaja. It can be said that these two families are side by side. Gu Jinglian from the Gu family in Beijing. If it's really me, then wouldn't Chu Ho be a rich madam?" Ai Shui pursed her lips. "But I didn't remember wrongly, did I? Because this name is very recognizable. After all, there aren't many men with this name. Moreover, I have a special impression of Lien. Chu Ho's name had a he in it, while her husband's name had a Lien in it. I was just saying that their names are very loving." "Huh, are you serious?" "Really?" The group fell silent. Some of the people who had ridiculed Chu Ho before felt a little uneasy. "So, Chu Ho's husband has quite the background. He's a big shot. If I offend her, she might come looking for trouble. She dares." Another person retorted, "It's a lawful society now. Why should we be afraid of those mobs?" "Don't underestimate the Gu family. Legal system? Ha! The rules of society now are set by these big shots. The weak are prey to the strong. Those without status don't even have the right to speak." Ai Shui nodded and said, "I'll go back later and ask Chu Ho." "Well, it's better to ask clearly. If it's really Gu Jinglian, who knows, maybe you can build a good relationship with Chu Ho and have more connections. In the future, you can even have some connections with the Gu family. She has such high standards. She's not someone you can associate with just because you want to. You can't say that." Everyone was silent for a while. Chapter 3761. On the way home, Chu Ho sat in the back seat and looked out of the window. Gu Jinglian suddenly asked, "Who are those people?" Oh, I know them from the group. In the future, don't interact with these people. Gu Jinglian added, I don't like people who speak in a strange way. Chuho also nodded. Even without Gu Jinglian's reminder, she also felt that they were not the same kind of people. She was not good at socializing. In addition, some pregnant people loved to gossip and gossip because they were idle at home. She did not like it. When Chuho reached home, she turned on her phone and saw many WeChat messages from AI Shui. Chuho, is your husband Gu Jinglian from the Gu family in Beijing? There seems to be some unhappiness today. Please don't take it to heart. By the way, she asked me to return the $40 you gave her previously, a red packet of $40. She did not know why, but after returning from the gathering, AI Shui's attitude towards her had become much more cautious. She was afraid that she would say something unpleasant and make her unhappy. She felt that she was trembling with fear, as if she was in awe of her. Chuho replied, whether or not he's from the Gu family, there's nothing special about it. However, AI Shui did not reply for a long time. She did not know if she was busy or if she did not know how to reply, and was deliberating. After a long time, AI Shui only replied carelessly, You're more than 5 months pregnant. Take care of the baby. In the future, if it's convenient for you, I can teach you how to knit a sweater. Okay, Chuho replied indifferently. She felt that AI Shui's attitude made her a little uncomfortable. Since returning from the gathering, the WeChat group had become much quieter. Hence, Chuho directly left the group and simply took care of the baby in peace. When she was more than 6 months pregnant, Chuho cut her hair a little shorter. The short hair that reached her ears was like a knife. This was done behind Gu Jinglian's back. When Gu Jinglian came back and saw that her hair was cut a little short, he was obviously a little unhappy. However, Chuho said that her hair was too long and it wasn't convenient for her to take a shower, so he didn't say anything. Unknowingly, her belly was getting bigger and bigger. In the early stages of pregnancy, there was no movement, but as time went on, her stomach grew bigger and bigger, as if she had been pumped full of air. Gradually, when she was 7 months pregnant, Chuho began to pant when she walked with a big belly. It seemed that his physical fitness had also deteriorated. Uncle Fu hired a yoga tutor. When he was free, Chuho would practice yoga. When she was 7 months pregnant, everyone in the Gu family was very nervous. After all, there was a saying that one could live for 8 months, but not 7. At 7 months, one had to be the most cautious. It was only when they had endured for more than 8 months that everyone breathed a sigh of relief. When she was more than 8 months pregnant, Gu Jinglian's attitude also changed a lot. Although he had been very attentive to Chu Ho ever since she was pregnant, Gu Jinglian was even more nervous when she was more than 8 months pregnant. Some of the family business matters were temporarily put aside, and he was wholeheartedly accompanying her to take care of the baby. The days of pregnancy were especially difficult, and Gu Jinglian was by her side and would do things himself. For example, when Chuho wanted to eat an apple, a certain man didn't wait for Uncle Fu to serve him. He took the initiative to personally wash the apple, peel it, and even carefully cut it. He inserted a toothpick into the apple and brought it to her. Chuho was a little surprised. Chapter 3762. Chuho was too lazy to hold them with his hands, so he patiently fed them to her one by one. Once, Uncle Fu passed by the study. When he was tidying up the study for him, he saw Chuho sleeping in Gu Jinglian's arms. Gu Jinglian was holding a book in his hands. Unlike the reference books he used to hold, he was now focused on researching the problems of postpartum care. It had to be said that Chuho was very fortunate. It wasn't that Gu Jinglian didn't have any women in the past, but those women didn't receive the same treatment as her. They served her like she was the Empress Dowager, fearing that there would be any mistakes. Even Chuho laughed at them for being too nervous. It was just a pregnancy. How could they be so exaggerated? It wasn't that she hadn't given birth before. When she gave birth to Xiao Bao, she had endured such a long period of time alone. Now, everyone in the Gu family was eyeing her covetously. It was too exaggerated. However, even though she said that, the Gu family's attention still warmed her heart. After all, it was the first time in her life that she was valued so much. This was the warmth of a family. Chu Ho recalled that when she was on a mission and camping in the rainforest, one of the mercenaries who was on the same mission as her suddenly took out a photo. She glanced at it and saw a 5-year-old daughter in the photo. She was very cute and beautiful, and her eyebrows and eyes resembled his. He said proudly, "My daughter." However, after a pause, he said sadly, "It's a pity that until now, I haven't given her mother a proper status." He was away on missions all year round, and they spent more time apart than together. After so many years of feelings, he didn't even have the time to arrange a wedding before his daughter was born. In the past, he was a sharp and arrogant man. However, after having a daughter, perhaps it was because he had become a father, he became much more mature and steady. He said, "After this mission is over, I'll earn another sum of money and go back to get married and have children." Unexpectedly, during that mission, he was accidentally injured, and a large part of his left arm was broken from the elbow. It could be said that he had bid farewell to his mercenary career. After announcing his retirement, Chu Ho walked him out of the mercenary team. He saw the woman who was carrying a little girl walk in front of him. The little girl looked at the man's broken arm and cried in fear. However, the man's heart ached terribly. Even though his arm was broken, he still insisted on hugging her and coaxing her. "Daddy will always be with you from now on. I won't go anywhere." During the amputation, the man did not frown at all. However, when he held his daughter, he cried uncontrollably. The gentleness in his eyes was something she had never seen before. A father's love was really heavy and silent. It was the same for Gu Jinglian. Although he never said anything on the surface, sometimes when she was lying on the bed and he thought she was asleep, he would secretly press his ear against her belly to listen. Whenever he heard the slightest trace of fetal movement, he would reveal a gentle smile. He would even talk to the two little guys through their bellies. "Can you hear Daddy's voice?" Gu Jinglian gently caressed her belly and said gently, "We'll meet in a little more than a month." As he said this, he seemed to feel that he was a little too childish and laughed. Chapter 37:63. The fetal movements became more and more frequent and obvious. At 9 months, Gu Jinglian could even see the baby's fists and feet when the fetus moved. It was too magical. If he had not experienced it himself, it would be hard to imagine that giving birth to life was such a magical thing. It was magical and sacred. Gu Jinglian began to imagine how the two little guys would look like after they were born a month later. The girl would look like him, and the boy would look like her. Having a son and a daughter was the happiest thing in life. Have you noticed? President Gu has been smiling a lot recently. He used to be so serious, but now, sitting alone in the office, it seems like he often smiles to himself. Yes, I've noticed it too. President Gu never smiled in the past and looked cold. Now, there are a few times when I walk into the office and accidentally see him smiling foolishly at a pile of documents. It's unbelievable, but I can only pretend that I didn't see it. Ha ha! Just as the secretaries were whispering to each other, a stern voice suddenly sounded. "What are you talking about?" Where the group of people looked up and saw Gu Jinglian standing in front of them expressionlessly. They were a little surprised. President Gu." Gu Jinglian glanced at them coldly. "Are you very free?" No, no, no. We're talking about work. Is that so? Gu Jinglian narrowed his eyes. Why do I seem to hear you mention my name? Oh, one of the female employees was quick-witted and immediately said, We're talking. Young Mistress Gu is 9 months pregnant. She should be giving birth soon, right? Yes, we're imagining how the 2 Xiaobao babies will look after they're born. The little princess will look like President Gu, and the little master will look like young Mistress Gu. One had to know that Gu Jinglian was most concerned about Chu Ho and the 2 unborn Xiaobao babies. Therefore, they hurriedly catered to his interests and diverted his attention. When Gu Jinglian heard this, he snorted and raised his eyebrows slightly. However, for the first time, he did not say anything. Instead, he said coldly, Do your own thing. However, just as he turned around, he thought of something and curiously turned back. You said that a daughter looks like her father. What's the basis? Of course, my daughter looks just like her father. That's right. Anyway, all the children I've seen, as long as they're girls, look more like their fathers. I don't know why, but at least the ones I've seen are all like that. It's reasonable to exist. Otherwise, they wouldn't all say that. The corners of Gu Jinglian's lips curled up slightly. Although he tried his best to restrain himself, the proud curve of his lips was obvious. I hope so. After he finished speaking, his face returned to its usual coldness. He cleared his throat and returned to his office. When he entered the office, the people at the secretary desk breathed a sigh of relief. They winked at each other and laughed secretly. After getting off work early, Gu Jinglian returned to the Gu residence. However, he saw Uncle Fu and Aunt Qin waiting at the door. They looked around and saw the car arrive. They immediately went up to it, but when they saw that it was Gu Jinglian who got out of the car, they sighed in disappointment. Gu Jinglian got out of the car. Seeing their anxious expressions, he was a little unhappy. What's wrong? Aunt Qin shook her head and said, I thought Xiaohe was back. Chapter 3764. Uncle Fu immediately explained. Chu Ho went out in the morning and said that he would be back in the afternoon, but he's still nowhere to be seen. Gu Jinglian asked, Did you call him? I did, but the call was hung up. Hung up? Gu Jinglian was a little alarmed. No matter what, Chu Ho would not hang up on anyone. He did not believe it, so he made a call himself. The moment he heard the beeping sound, the call was hung up. Gu Jinglian's brows immediately furrowed. What's going on? He asked Uncle Fu. Did she say where she was going? Yes, where? It seems like a friend asked her out. Someone called Qingxue. Qingxue? Yes, I heard that she sent a message to her on WeChat. And then, without another word, Gu Jinglian got into the car and closed the door. Ignoring Uncle Fu and Nanny Qin's anxious questions, he instructed, Drive. Mr. Gu, where are we going? Drive first. Gu Jinglian immediately dialed a number and ordered someone to check Meng Qingxue's address. Within a few minutes, the address was sent over via text message. He gave the address, and 10 minutes later, the car stopped at a villa area. As soon as he got out of the car, the private bodyguards guarding the door came forward to stop him. Gu Jinglian did not even look and broke through the barrier. Just as he passed by the courtyard, he saw Meng Qingxue taking care of the flowers and plants that she had painstakingly cultivated in the courtyard. Meng Qingxue. He called her name. Meng Qingxue heard the noise and turned around. When she saw that it was Gu Jinglian, she smiled. Young Master Gu, why are you here? Where's Chu Ho? Chu Ho? Gu Jinglian frowned. She's not with you? This question stunned Meng Qingxue. After a long while, it was only when Gu Jinglian urged her again that she regained her senses and shook her head blankly. No, I didn't. Uncle Fu said that you asked her to meet you, but she went out in the morning and hasn't returned home yet. What? Meng Qingxue was completely dumbfounded. I didn't ask her out. Isn't she 9 months pregnant now? She's about to give birth. How could I ask her out? Don't lie to me. Meng Qingxue was anxious and worried. How could I lie? It's true. She said that she agreed to meet you because you contacted Chuho on WeChat. WeChat. Meng Qingxue was even more dumbfounded. I think my WeChat account was hacked. Because I don't have any friends on WeChat, I wasn't in a hurry to get it back. Gu Jinglian was completely stunned. Meng Qingxue also sensed that something was wrong. She frowned, but didn't dare to think of other possibilities. Gu Jinglian was about to leave when his cell phone suddenly rang. However, it wasn't the ringtone, but the sound of FaceTime. He took out his cell phone and saw that the person who had initiated FaceTime was Chuho's ID. FaceTime was a video calling software built into Apple's iOS. It connected to the internet through Wi-Fi or cellular data and installed FaceTime on both devices. It enabled video calls between the devices. When Gu Jinglian saw that Chuho had sent FaceTime, he finally felt relieved. He picked up the call, but the video screen on the other end was dark. He asked, "Chuho, where are you?" There was no response from the other end for a long time. Gu Jinglian couldn't help but feel nervous again. "Chuho? Chu. Young Master Gu, long time no see." Suddenly, a horseman's voice interrupted him. Gu Jinglian was stunned. He recognized the voice immediately. Chapter 3765. Black Panther was just a nickname. He was a middle-aged man with a knife handle on his face and dark skin. His card-playing style was very fierce. Almost no one was a match for him. This person used to hang out in the Gu family's previous casino. No one knew his real name, but his gambling skills were top-notch. Rather than saying that his gambling skills were top-notch, it was better to say that his skills were top-notch. When he gambled, he would cheat. Using this miraculous trick, he earned a lot of money and made countless gamblers lose their family fortune. Gu Jinglian had set a rule in the casino. If anyone was found to have cheated, they would have to break an arm. Everyone was well aware of Black Panther's skills, but there was no evidence, and no one caught him at the scene. Therefore, there was nothing they could do about him. Complaints were heard in the casino. Later, Gu Jinglian gambled with him once. He rarely made a move. If Black Panther had not stirred up trouble in the casino, he would not have bothered. In terms of gambling skills, Gu Jinglian was slightly better. He caught Black Panther red-handed and broke one of his arms according to the rules. Black Panther hated him because of this. However, for a long time after that, there was no news of this person, and he almost disappeared. Unexpectedly, how did Chuho's phone end up in his hands? Could it be? Gu Jinglian seemed to have expected something. The Gu family had many enemies. Usually, there were many who sought revenge in the underworld. Therefore, Gu Jinglian usually made a move with great momentum and did not let his enemies make a move. However, they had their eyes on Chuho. He had clearly hidden her very well. How did she fall into Black Panther's hands? Gu Jinglian could not figure it out. Could it be Black Panther had stolen Meng Qingshue's account and used WeChat to lure Chuho out? Thinking of this possibility, Gu Jinglian was almost unable to restrain his anger. Where is she? How rare, how rare. Black Panther sneered sinisterly. I didn't expect that Gu Jinglian, who is rumored to be cold and unreasonable, would have a woman he loves. So, I didn't kidnap the wrong person this time. Young Master Gu, don't be so anxious. She's in my hands now. She's fine. Gu Jinglian immediately requested, "Let me see her." "Sure, if you want to see it, I'll show it to you." The video suddenly lit up. The lights seemed to have been switched on. Then, Chuho's figure appeared on the screen. She was chained to a stool. She was conscious, but her mouth was taped, so she couldn't make a sound. Based on the details of the room, it seemed to be a very dark room without a single window. There was an incandescent lamp above her head. Then, a man's scarred face appeared in the video. "Is this the woman you want to see?" Black Panther was standing behind her. He bent down slightly and pinched Chuho's chin hard, as if he was deliberately showing Gu Jinglian the goods. He turned her head and lifted her eyelids for him to see. "Look, it's the real deal. Is this woman your woman?" Gu Jinglian's expression was tense as he gritted his teeth. "Looks like it." Black Panther's gaze fell on Chuho's bulging abdomen. He clicked his tongue twice and said, "Her belly is quite big. I'm guessing there's more than one child inside. Hey, it's been 9 months. If you take it out, it should have taken shape, right?" Chapter 3766. "Otherwise, you'll definitely tear me into pieces." Black Panther shook his head and said disdainfully, "What era are we in now? It's time to change these lines that haven't changed for thousands of years." Half of the man's body was reflected in the video, but his left sleeve was empty. "Do you see that? You were the one who ordered me to cut off this arm back then. I still remember this." Black Panther smiled coldly and said, "But to be honest with you, I don't have many days left to live. You can do whatever you want to me. Anyway, even if you send thousands of people to surround me now, I'll just die sooner or later. But fortunately, there's still a scapegoat." After a pause, Black Panther clicked his tongue again. "How can I only say one? I have 3 scapegoats. Your woman and the 2 bastards in her belly." Gu Jinglian clenched his fists. "What do you want? Let me tell you straight. I don't have much time left. Before I die, we should at least settle the score between us, right?" Black Panther said faintly, "Gu Jinglian, let's play a game. How about it?" "Ha ha ha." His laughter was like that of a wolf. In the empty and dark room, he sounded like a malicious ghost. "So, you were the one who stole Meng Qingshua's account and lured her over? Is that important?" Black Panther said, "What's important is the score between us. If you want to keep your woman and children, I'll give you a chance. Card Archway, Wui Road, 9 to 2 Underground Warehouse. Come alone. Remember, if you come alone, I'll make sure that she has one less person in her belly. Don't think that I'm afraid of death. Anyway, I don't have much time left. If you break the rules of the game, haha, I won't give you a chance to choose again." With that, he hung up on FaceTime. Gu Jinglian walked to the driver's seat almost without hesitation and opened the door. "Get out of the car." The driver, who had heard everything just now, hesitated. "Young Master Gu, you can't go alone. It bodes ill. Get out of the car." Young Master Gu Jinglian abruptly pulled out the pistol from his belt and aimed it at his temple. "I'm warning you, my patience is limited. Now get out of the car." The driver opened his mouth and broke out in a cold sweat. He immediately got out of the car, but Gu Jinglian pushed him aside and got into the car. He closed the door and drove the car without waiting for anyone to stop him. He sped towards the address Black Leopard gave him. On the way, Black Leopard sent a video to confirm that Gu Jinglian was really going there alone. Only then was he relieved. "Gu Jinglian, I'll wait for you. 30 minutes. I won't wait for you after that." Black Leopard then hung up the phone. Gu Jinglian was so angry that he threw his phone on the seat. He stepped on the accelerator and sped on the national highway leading to the destination. 20 minutes later, he arrived at his destination, only to find that it was actually at the foot of a barren mountain. There were no signs of anyone living in the surroundings. There was only an abandoned warehouse in front of him. It looked eerie. It was already dusk, which made the warehouse even scarier. Gu Jinglian made a call. The call went through, and Black Leopard asked, "Have you arrived?" I'm at the entrance. Why isn't anyone here to welcome me? Chapter 3767. Gu Jinglian frowned and was about to reply when Black Panther said nonchalantly, "So be it. Anyway, it's useless." With that, he hung up the phone. Gu Jinglian walked to the entrance of the warehouse. Just as he crossed the yellow line in front of the door, he heard a creak. The heavy shutter door seemed to be equipped with a sensor and opened automatically. He walked into the warehouse until the shutter door fell heavily behind him. A thick layer of dust rose in the warehouse. Gu Jinglian covered his mouth in disgust and waved it away. The lights came on. He raised his eyes and looked around, only to see a large table in the huge warehouse. There was a man sitting in front of the table. He was sitting on what looked like a torture stool. On the table was a card dealing machine that was often seen in casinos. On the man's left was a television. At this moment, the screen was flashing with static. The man was wearing a sack on his head. Gu Jinglian walked over and took the sack away. He saw that it was one of the Gu family's subordinates who was in charge of maintaining order in the casino. It could be said that he was Gu Jinglian's right-hand man in the casino. The man's mouth was also covered with a layer of tape. When he saw Gu Jinglian, his eyes were filled with fear. This fear was not because he was afraid of anything, but because he did not expect Gu Jinglian to really come. Gu Jinglian immediately tore the tape off his mouth. The man immediately said, "Mr. Gu, you shouldn't have come. What's going on? Mr. Gu, please leave quickly. Don't worry about me." This subordinate thought that Gu Jinglian had come for him. He did not know that Chuho had also been kidnapped. Gu Jinglian frowned. "Qingqiu, what's going on?" I don't know. When I woke up, I was already here. As she spoke, the static on the television screen flickered for a while. Then it was connected to a black and white video. On the screen, Black Panther sat in front of the camera and looked at the camera calmly. Through the camera, it was as if he was looking directly at him. "Since you're here, you're a guest. Sit down." Gu Jinglian suddenly realized something. He looked around and suddenly found surveillance cameras in the corners of the walls. Chuho was not in the room. Similarly, Black Panther wasn't around either. And this room was already filled with surveillance cameras. He had already entered his trap. Gu Jinglian didn't know what other tricks there were in this room. Then he heard Black Panther speak again. "Don't be so nervous. Sit down. It's just a game." "What game?" "Your favorite game." Black Leopard smiled. "Do you see the dealing machine on the table?" Gu Jinglian appeared very calm. "Yes, I heard that CEO Gu is best at blackjack. Back then, I lost to you because we played blackjack. Why don't we end it with 21 points today?" "All right." Gu Jinglian asked, "How do we play?" "First of all, it's gambling. We need to bet and chips. I wonder what chips CEO Gu has brought." Gu Jinglian asked again, "How much do you want?" "I don't want money." Black Panther suddenly said meaningfully, "How about this? I'll let you choose." Black Panther turned the camera. Gu Jinglian saw Chuho on the screen, who was still tied up. He suddenly understood what Black Panther meant by chips. Chapter 3768. I'll give you two choices. One is your woman and your two children. However, I'm guessing that you won't agree to it. So, do you see the box under the table? Gu Jinglian took half a step back. As expected, there was a box under the table. He was a little hesitant. "Don't worry. There's no bomb inside. If I really wanted to kill you, I wouldn't have hidden the bomb in this box." He. Gu Jinglian took a deep breath and picked up the box. When he opened it, there were two strange-looking torture devices in the box. One of them seemed to be an iron headgear. However, this headgear hid an extraordinary mystery. When worn on the head, there were 2 electric drill bits that were aimed at the temples. If the mechanism was triggered, the drill bits would be nailed into the temples until they pierced through the skull. The other one seemed to be a hanging platform. When the mechanism was triggered, the person's fingers would be cut off. These 2 items will be your wager. You can choose from them. Ha ha. When you're ready, the game will officially start. However, I have something to remind you. Black Panther narrowed his eyes. I won't use anything to restrain you. However, if you try to escape and leave this warehouse before the game ends, then I'll perish together with your woman and the 2 bastards in my womb. Chu-Ho, who was behind him, let out an angry roar. Gu Jinglian suddenly said, Chu-Ho, don't worry. With me here, you'll be fine. Then he took out the 2 torture devices. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart. No wonder Black Panther said that it didn't matter even if he brought a gun. There was no use for it at all. Indeed, there was no use for it. This man still wanted to torture him ruthlessly even before he died, until he was better off dead. However, the person playing chess with him was his right-hand man, Qingjiu. Qingjiu was his most loyal subordinate. Gu Jinglian's expression became more tense. Black Panther said, First, put together the points. The one with the higher points will choose the torture device. The card dealer dealt 2 cards. At the same time, the handcuffs on one of Qingjiu's arms were automatically unlocked. One of Qingjiu's arms was freed. Boss, you can still make it if you leave now. Qingjiu lowered her voice and said, Don't worry about me. Leave now. I can't leave. Gu Jinglian's voice was soft but firm. He sat down on his seat. At the same time, he asked, Why should I believe that you won't hurt her if I play this game with you? You know what kind of person I am. Back then, when I lost to you, I also obeyed your rules of the game and took the initiative to break one of your arms. Similarly, I also follow the rules. If you believe me, then continue. If you don't believe me, then do as you please. Gu Jinglian gritted his teeth. However, he had no choice at all. Believe? He had a 50% chance of saving Chu-Ho. If he didn't believe it, then he wouldn't even have a 0. 1% chance. No matter what, he had to take a gamble. Flip the cards. Gu Jinglian opened the card in his hand. It was a 6 of clubs. Qingjiu looked at him and finally understood what Chu-Ho meant to Gu Jinglian. Hence, she also flipped her cards. Jack of hearts. Qingjiu was the bigger one. He would choose the torture device first. Chapter 3769. A mask and a hanging rack. If he chose the mask, he would definitely die if he lost. If he chose the hanging rack, he would only lose 5 fingers even if he lost. Black Panther said, Congratulations, Qingjiu. If I were you, I would definitely choose the hanging rack. Although Gu Jinglian was once your master, you wouldn't still want to be loyal at such a critical moment, would you? Don't worry, if you choose the hanging rack and Gu Jinglian wears that mask, he will definitely die if he loses. Ha 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 ha. His wild laughter was especially ear-piercing. Gu Jinglian lowered his head and did not speak. If Qingjiu betrayed him and chose the hanging rack, then he would definitely work hard and win. Qingjiu's gaze was fixed on the 2 instruments of torture, his whole body almost trembling. In the face of death, human selfishness seemed to be constantly causing trouble. He still had a daughter. Because of the mixing of crooks in the casino, his wife had left him long ago, and he depended on his daughter. He could not give up his life just like that. Absolutely not. In his heart, there was a thought that kept reminding him that nothing was more important than his life and his daughter. Right now, as Black Panther said, was loyalty really that important? Qingjiu suddenly looked at the screen and said, I have the right to choose now, right? No matter what decision I make, it's my right and can't be changed, right? Gambling, gambling. The rules of the game must be followed. Of course, you have the right to choose. Fight hard, and you will win. Okay, okay, Qingjiu said, okay, several times in a trembling voice. Suddenly, he raised his head and looked deeply at Gu Jinglian. Gu Jinglian looked at him calmly, as if waiting for his choice. He suddenly smiled and did not say anything. He stretched out his hand and chose the mask. Even Gu Jinglian was shocked. He did not expect Qingjiu to be able to overcome the fear of death and choose to be loyal to him from the beginning to the end. Do you still remember what I said to you when I first entered the Gu family? In life, I am yours. In death, I am also the soul of the Gu family. Qingjiu smiled and bit his lip hard, putting the mask on his head. Gu Jinglian's fist, which was hidden under the table, trembled slightly. On the screen, Black Panther was also shocked, but he did not say anything in the end. Gu Jinglian, it's your turn. You should be familiar with this thing, right? This is one of the punishments that casinos use on gamblers who cheat. Of course I'm familiar with it. Gu Jinglian fixed the hanger and calmly fixed the 5 slender fingers on it, one by one. Rules are rules. I will obey them. I hope that you will be no exception. Black Panther grunted. All right, let the game begin. Blackjack, one of the casino games. The game was played by 2 to 6 people, using 52 cards other than the Joker and the Joker. The goal of the players was to make the sum of the cards in their hand not exceed 21 points and try to make it as big as possible. When 2 people played, it was usually a deck of cards. Cards 2 to 9 were calculated according to the number of origin points. K, Q, J, and 10 cards were all counted as 10 points. They were usually recorded as T, which meant 10. Ace cards could be counted as 1 point or 11 points. It was up to the player to decide. When the player stopped playing, the points would be counted as the maximum and try not to explode. Chapter 3770. The ace card could be counted as either 1 or 11 points. It was up to the player to decide. When the player stopped, the points would be counted as the highest, and the player would try not to bust. When all the initial cards were distributed, if the player got an ace or AT, regardless of the order, he would have a black jack. If the dealer's face card was AT and his hidden card was an ace, he would directly flip it over and have a black jack. Jack. However, because it was a game between 2 people, the rules were very simple. One was a face card, and the other was a hidden card. One of the cards could not be seen by anyone other than the player himself, while the face card was shown to everyone. Next was the normal process of getting the cards. Hit was to get the cards, stand was to stop asking for cards, keep, and double was to double the chips. During the process of dealing, if the sum of the points of the player's cards exceeded 21, the player would lose. It was called a bust. The points of the busted cards would be very small after the recalculation. The winning rule was when the cards in the player's hand were closest to 21, then between the 2 players, the player with the biggest card would win. For example, if one of the players had a J and a 9, then it would represent 19 points. If the other player asked for 3 cards, a J, a 9, and a 2, then it would represent 21 points and win. Let me announce the rules one last time. There are a total of 5 games. There are 2 electric drills on each side of the headgear. If you lose, the drill will be nailed into your temple. If you lose 5 times in a row, it will directly penetrate your skull. If you lose once on the hanger, a finger will be cut off. Even the root will be cut off. It's so exciting. I'm really looking forward to it. Cut the crap. Gu Jinglian said, deal the cards. The dealing machine dealt 2 cards to Gu Jinglian and Qingjiu each. Gu Jinglian flipped over his hidden card. It was a 6 of spades, and his face card was a 3 of hearts. His luck was terrible. Qing Jiu's hidden card could not be seen, but his face card was an 8 of clubs. Even if Gu Jinglian had 2 cards in his hand, it would only be a little bigger than his face card. If his hidden card was a 3, then it would be a total of 11 points. Then, if it was an ace, the biggest card, it would be 19 points, which was very big. He would definitely have to call for more cards. Even if he played the biggest card, ace, which cost 11 points, he still had a total of 20 points. Gu Jinglian said, "Hit." The card dealer dealt another card. It was a 9 of grass. It added up to 18 points. He could only keep it for now. If he continued to bid, it would be too risky. If he was dealt more than 3 points, then his hand would explode. Where were the cards in Qing Jiu's hand? Would he scream again? In addition to strength and computing ability, 21 points also depended on luck. The cards in the card dealing machine had been reshuffled, so no one could predict what the next card would be. If the wager in front of him was ordinary money, then he could forget about it. However, whether it was Qing Jiu or him, the chips were too valuable. They had to be cautious. President Gu, Qing Jiu suddenly spoke. Gu Jinglian looked up and his eyes darkened. "Qing Jiu, what are you trying to say? I think I won't be able to walk out of here alive this time." Qing Jiu smiled bitterly. I just want to ask you for a favor," he mouthed. "I have a daughter. You know that. Please take good care of my daughter." Gu Jinglian heard and nodded lightly. Qing Jiu immediately said, "Stand." This meant that the game was suspended. He did not want the cards anymore. Chapter 3771. Gu Jinglian pondered for a moment, then shouted, "Stand." There was no need for him to take any more risks. Qing Jiu was already deliberately going easy on him. The card in his hand was an 8 of clubs. If his hidden card was a T or an ace, then it meant that he had lost. He recognized this finger. If he used his 5 fingers in exchange for Qing Jiu's life, he was willing. It was worth it. Flip the cards. Qing Jiu and Gu Jinglian flipped their hidden cards over at the same time. Gu Jinglian glanced at Qing Jiu's card and was shocked to find that his card was a 6 of clubs. Qing Jiu had lost. Gu Jinglian's eyes flickered. Black Panther's cold voice came from the television screen. "Qing Jiu, are you going easy on him? You don't seem to know how painful it is to be nailed to the temple by an electric drill. Just as well, I'll let you experience what it means to be in so much pain that you wish you were dead." Buzz, buzz. The electric drill began to spin violently. Qing Jiu closed his eyes tightly and gritted his teeth. His hands gripped the edge of the table tightly. The moment the electric drill pierced his temple, the indescribable pain caused him to let out a heart-wrenching roar. "Stop!" Gu Jinglian finally couldn't stand it anymore. He slammed his fist on the table, and the electric drill stopped abruptly. Black Panther shook his head regretfully. What a deep bond between a master and a servant. It's too touching, too touching. Qing Jiu's electric drill was nailed to his temple, and he couldn't move at all. In fact, the electric drill had only penetrated less than half an inch and had only pierced the first layer of his skin. Even so, this kind of pain was something no one else could understand. Gu Jinglian asked anxiously, "Qing Jiu, are you okay?" "I'm fine." Qing Jiu couldn't help but shake his head. He could only reply like that. However, every word seemed to be extremely laborious. Every time he spoke, his nerves would be pulled, and his temples would be pulled. Qing Jiu was in so much pain that his back was already drenched in cold sweat. In the other room, Chu Ho leaned quietly on the chair. She forced herself to calm down quickly. His body was fixed in place, and he could barely move. However, his hands were behind his back, and his fingers could move freely. She examined her own body. Previously, before Gu Jinglian came, Black Panther's attention was all on her. She did not dare to act rashly. After all, she was not alone. There were 2 babies in her belly. Without full confidence, she did not dare to take risks. When Gu Jinglian arrived as scheduled and entered the dark room that Black Panther had arranged in advance, Black Panther paid attention to the surveillance screen and rarely paid attention to her. That would give her a chance. Her hands were tied behind her back, so she couldn't move. However, what made Chuho feel relieved was that there was a needle on her sleeve. The front was the cuff, and the back was like a pin. She pretended to be calm on the surface, but she was secretly working hard to remove the cuff. He had to be careful. If the needle fell to the ground, not only would she lose the chance to escape, but it might also attract Black Panther's attention. Chuho gritted her teeth and straightened the needle. As she couldn't see it all, it was inevitable that she would accidentally prick her hand. However, this pain was nothing to her. She had to escape as soon as possible. She couldn't watch them play such a cruel game. Chapter 3772. The card that was sent to Gu Jinglian was an ace, and the card was a king. It was exactly 21 points. His luck was amazing. This meant that Qingjiu would lose without a doubt. No matter what the hidden card in his hand was, the revealed card was a 2 of spades. It was a very small card. No matter how big the hidden card was, it was useless. However, Gu Jinglian was a little hesitant. Should he ask for another card? If he blew his card, he would lose and lose a finger. However, he could at least protect Qingjiu for 1 round. Should he? Gu Jinglian's gaze fell on his hand. Just as he was hesitating, Qingjiu said, "Boss, you don't have to protect me." He knew what he was thinking. Gu Jinglian frowned, but did not say anything. Qingjiu said, "The hidden card in your hand should be an ace, right?" Gu Jinglian was stunned. He had guessed correctly. Qingjiu said, "If you blow your card to protect me, then I choose to blow my card too. Boss, don't worry about me, okay?" When Black Panther saw this scene, his breathing suddenly quickened. He was inexplicably irritated. What's the point of playing the game like this? You give in to him, and he gives in to you. Is this still gambling? Huh. I'm not doing charity, nor am I playing house. I'm serious. Since you want to die, I'll kill you now. How about it? As he spoke, Black Panther was about to press the mechanism. Gu Jinglian said sternly, "You're breaking the rules of the game." "We didn't break the rules. You have no right to do this. Get this straight. Right now, his life, your woman's life, and your child's life are all in my hands. I'm God. I have the right to rule everything. You want to break the rules? You're the ones breaking the rules. I just can't bear to see how close you 2 are. I might as well give you a quick death. How about it?" Gu Jinglian was about to flare up when Qingjiu immediately pressed his hand down. "Boss, calm down." Then Qingjiu said to him, "Let's continue." Gu Jinglian endured and did not flare up. Qingjiu said, "I'm playing seriously." Gu Jinglian nodded. "Play seriously with me. If you lose, I have nothing to say." "Yes." Qingjiu was deeply touched. He understood that Gu Jinglian could not bear to watch him die. Thus, he raised his hand and said, "Hit." The card dealer dealt another card. It was a 9 of hearts. Qingjiu pinched her palms. When it was Gu Jinglian's turn, Gu Jinglian kept his cards. Qingjiu also held back. The cards were flipped over one after another. Gu Jinglian had 21 points, the maximum. Qingjiu, on the other hand, was at 18 points. She was punished. The electric drill started up again. Sizzling sounds could be heard as if they were about to die. Qingjiu anxiously clenched his fists. As the drill bit penetrated deeper, his entire body convulsed violently as if he had been electrocuted. When the drill was finished, his breathing became more and more rapid. It was so painful that the game couldn't continue. Black Panther stared at the camera and observed Qing Jiu's pained expression, but he didn't say anything. However, Gu Jinglian knew that on one hand, Qing Jiu was really in pain. On the other hand, he was stalling for time. He also fell silent. From his point of view, it was hard to imagine what kind of pain Qing Jiu was enduring. However, it must be a fate worse than death. Qing Jiu even thought of biting his tongue to commit suicide. However, for some reason, his daughter's smile appeared in his mind. Subconsciously, his will to live was awakened. Chapter 3773. Black Panther's cold-blooded attitude was evident in his words. Even though Qing Jiu was in so much pain that he wished he was dead, he still did not take it seriously. Instead, he felt irritated. He was sick and irritated like a demon. Gu Jinglian suddenly caught a glimpse of Chu Ho on the screen, with her head lowered. She seemed to be trying to pry open the lock on her wrist. However, Black Panther kept staring at the screen and did not pay attention to Chu Ho. Or perhaps he had underestimated Chu Ho. He only knew that Chu Ho was Gu Jinglian's woman and his wife, but he did not know that Chu Ho had another identity. As Interpol's top anti-mafia inspector, Chu Ho was best at interrogation and counter-interrogation. If there was enough time, this chain would not be able to trap her at all. Gu Jinglian immediately shifted his gaze to Black Panther. Through the camera, the two of them stared at each other fiercely. Gu Jinglian suddenly curled the corners of his lips into a cold smile. Black Panther, if you have the guts, bet with me. When Black Panther heard this, the muscles on his face twitched for a while, but he asked darkly, "What do you have to bet with me?" "Your life and mine." Gu Jinglian laughed. "Do you think this game is interesting? Qing Jiu is my subordinate. He will give in to me no matter what. If you want my life, how can you win against Qing Jiu?" Black Panther narrowed his eyes. Qing Jiu was a little surprised. He could tell that Gu Jinglian was deliberately stalling for time, but he did not know why he was stalling for time. Just as he was feeling puzzled, Gu Jinglian's voice became louder. "Do you dare to bet with me? Ha! How can I compete with you? What are the rules of the game?" "There are a total of 5 chances. If you win 3 rounds, then whether it's my arm, my hand, my leg, or my life, you can have whatever you want." After a pause, Gu Jinglian dismantled the hanger and said meaningfully, "If you lose, you have to let him go." "Huh." Black Panther smiled. "Interesting. However, I feel that your bet is not big enough. Your life alone is not enough. Your woman's life, your child's life, and your subordinate's life, how about it?" Gu Jinglian hesitated for a moment and nodded. Black Panther continued, "Then let your subordinates deal the cards for me. But let me warn you, the room is full of surveillance cameras. There are also surveillance cameras under your desk. If you dare to cheat, you won't be able to escape my eyes." Gu Jinglian raised his eyebrows. This was exactly what he wanted. This meant that the Black Panther would focus more attention on him. "All right." Gu Jinglian appeared very confident. "I'm confident that I can win against you. Don't speak so lightly. Otherwise, when you lose, you'll have an ugly face." "Deal." The cards entered the card-dealing machine and were reshuffled. Everyone was dealt a face card, and then a face card. Now, Qing Jiu took Black Panther's place and flipped the cards for him. Qing Jiu's heart was in a mess. He did not know what Gu Jinglian was stalling for time, so much so that he was willing to gamble with his own life. He was a little confused, but he did not dare to ask anything. Gu Jinglian had always been calm when faced with problems. Perhaps he had thought of a strategy. Chapter 3774. The face card was a 6 of clubs. There was still room for risk. On the other side was a 10 of hearts. Gu Qingjiu had already shown the card to Black Leopard through the camera. Gu Jinglian observed Black Leopard's expression, but there was no expression on his face. He couldn't figure out if his hidden card was big or small. Hit, Gu Jinglian called. The dealer gave out a face card. It was a 2 of hearts. It was too small. It was a total of 17 points. However, Black Leopard kept it. This proved that the cards in his hand were definitely above 18 points. He didn't dare to call again. If he did, there was a high chance that he would bust. On the other hand, he had 17 points. It was also very easy for him to bust. However, if he didn't call, he would lose without a doubt. Gu Jinglian called for another card. Hit. It was a 3 of clubs, 20 points, unless Black Leopard's hidden card was an ace. However, the chances of that were too small. At most, it would be a tie. On the other side, Black Leopard called for another card. It was a 5 of hearts. Black Leopard's expression was very ugly. It was a bust. The cards were flipped over. As expected, Black Leopard's card was a bust. The hidden card was a 7 and the face card was a 10. Black Leopard might have wanted to take a risk, but he didn't expect that his luck wouldn't be so good. Gu Jinglian's call just now had provoked him. He was worried that the cards in his hand were too small, so he wanted to take a risk. Black Leopard's expression was unfriendly. Humph. Consider yourself lucky. The corners of Gu Jinglian's mouth curled up coldly. 21 points wasn't purely based on luck. It also depended on one's ability to calculate cards and the points of the opponent's cards. It was even a psychological battle. Black Leopard didn't play well enough. If he didn't rely on Qian Shu, he wouldn't have been able to win so much money. If it was purely a competition of card skills, Gu Jinglian didn't take him seriously at all. The dealer dealt the cards again. Gu Jinglian's hidden card was a 10, and his face card was a 3. Black Panther's face card was a 7, and his hidden card was unknown. However, since Black Panther called first, it meant that his hidden card must be very small. The Black Panther's face was obviously not very satisfied. This meant that the points in his hand were stuck in the middle, neither going up nor down. If he called, it would be easy to blow his card, but if he didn't call, it would be too small. This meant that the cards in his hand were probably between 17 and 19 points. He still had a chance. Hit. Gu Jinglian called for another card. It was a 7 of spades. He looked up at Black Panther coldly and snorted, "It's your turn." The Black Leopard hesitated. He did not know if Gu Jinglian would bid again in the next round. Now that Gu Jinglian had 10 points, he did not know what the hidden cards were. Black Panther had obviously underestimated Gu Jinglian's luck. Gu Jinglian had an honorific title in the casino, European King. In the casino, there were 2 titles. One was unlucky, and the other was European King. Unlucky meant that his face was especially dark, and his luck was especially bad. European King was the opposite. His face was especially white, and his luck was especially good. Gu Jinglian belonged to the latter. No matter how bad his luck was, with his steady playing style, he wouldn't lose too badly. Black Panther decided not to take the risk. Stand. Gu Jinglian also called for a halt. Black Panther's expression became even darker. He knew that Gu Jinglian must have a lot of points in his hand. Otherwise, he would definitely bid again. When the cards were flipped, and he saw that Gu Jinglian had a total of 20 points, he suddenly couldn't sit still. Chapter 3775. However, Gu Jinglian smiled and said, "Didn't you say that there are surveillance cameras all around? Didn't you see that I cheated?" Black Panther clenched his fists tightly. After losing 2 rounds in a row, his mentality was a little unstable, so much so that he suddenly became irritable. In the 3rd round, if Gu Jinglian won another round, he would lose. her, but that was not important. Even if he lost, so what? He did not intend to follow the rules of the game. Regardless of whether he won or lost, he would not let him off so easily. Round 3. The dealer spat out 2 hidden cards. Gu Jinglian flipped it over. It was an 8 of clubs. His face card was a 5 of hearts, a total of 11 points. This was in the safe space. On the other hand, Black Leopard's face-up card was a 10. It was a very big card. Black Leopard called for another card. His face-up card was a 6. Obviously, if he didn't have a blowout, it meant that he had a lot of points. In this round, Black Panther had a higher chance of winning. Luck was something that could not be predicted. However, it did not matter. Gu Jinglian did not intend to win this round. He had originally intended to lose to Black Panther on purpose to stall for time. Hit. He continued to call for cards. A 4 came up, a 17 points. Black Panther held back. Gu Jinglian continued to call for cards. A queen came up, and he lost. Ha! When Black Panther saw his cards, he smiled proudly and said, "You lost." However, Gu Jinglian kindly reminded him, "If I win another round, you will lose." "Humph, you don't have the final say in this." "Oh," Gu Jinglian said, but remained calm and composed. "Let's wait and see." Black Panther gritted his teeth in hatred. He had originally wanted to see Gu Jinglian begging for mercy in a state where he could neither live nor die with his own eyes. However, even now, Gu Jinglian's expression did not crack at all. He was still as calm as ever. He did not even take him seriously. Damn it! How could this man be so calm? Was he not afraid? Was this person not afraid of death at all? Black Leopard said, angrily, "Deal the cards." In the 4th round, Gu Jinglian deliberately blew his cards and lost another round. The final round was of utmost importance. It would determine life and death. 1 round to determine the winner. Gu Jinglian's first hidden card was an ace, and he managed to get the last ace at such a crucial moment. His face card was a 3. Black Panther's face card was a 6. Although he didn't know what his hidden card was, at least it couldn't be an A. He had already gotten an A. This card was the final trump card. It could be recorded as 1 point or 11 points. Even if it was a big card, it would not be broken. Gu Jinglian called for another card. It was a queen. Fortunately, he had an ace card, so he did not lose. Black Panther called another 9, but he didn't blow his cards. This proved that his hidden cards were very small. Gu Jinglian called another card, 7. If the A card was calculated as 1 point, then A plus 3 plus 10 plus 7 was a total of 21 points. He had won. A confident smile appeared on Gu Jinglian's face. Black Panther could no longer sit still. He had already guessed that Gu Jinglian's cards must be 21 points. He had lost. Impossible. Black Panther decided to take another risk. He called for another card, but it was a king. He blew his cards. Shit. He cursed, his expression ferocious. Gu Jinglian, you win. Chapter 3776. If I win, you let her go. On what basis? Black Panther said angrily. On what basis should I let her go? On the basis that I won. Gu Jinglian asked coldly. Are you going to break the rules of the game? I'm God. No matter what the rules are, I'm the one who makes them. You're saying that I'm breaking the rules of the game. Black Panther suddenly stood up, picked up the gun on the table, and walked to Chuho's side. When Chuho saw him walk over, she was shocked. However, Black Panther grabbed Chuho's collar tightly and pressed the muzzle of the gun to her forehead. He threatened, "Put on the hood." Gu Jinglian's face darkened. He knew that Black Panther would break the rules, but what shocked him even more was that Chuho didn't manage to break free in time. She couldn't break free. There wasn't enough time, but it definitely wasn't short either. Through the camera, Gu Jinglian saw that Chuho was covered in cold sweat, and her expression was equally cold. Qing Jiu said, angrily, Black Panther, you're breaking the rules of the game. You're going back on your word. Shut up, Black Panther said with a ferocious expression. Gu Jinglian, if you don't want your woman to die, put on that hood for me. A life for a life. If you die, I'll let her go. Why should I believe that you'll let her go if I die? Gu Jinglian said coldly, unless you let go of her now. Huh, in your dreams. Do you think that I don't know what you're up to? Black Panther pointed angrily at Chuho's temple and threatened at the top of his voice. Put on the hood. Gu Jinglian's gaze fell on Chuho, only to see her widening her eyes and shaking her head. Black Panther slapped him across the face. Don't move, Gu Jinglian said sternly. You're not allowed to touch her. Put the hood on. Put it on. Gu Jinglian turned around and looked at the headband on Qingjio's head. He suddenly walked over. Qingjio's face was filled with rejection. Boss, don't. Even if you die, Black Panther won't let them go. Go quickly. Gu Jinglian closed his eyes and finally made up his mind. He reached out and removed the hood from Qingjio's head. Qingjio struggled, unwilling to let him take the hood away. However, with one hand tied up, he could not stop Gu Jinglian at all. Gu Jinglian put on the headgear and turned to look at the screen, only to see Black Panther finally smiling proudly. Ha ha, do you finally know fear when death is at hand? Pausing for a moment, he smiled sinisterly. However, I'll give you a chance. Kneel in front of me now and beg for mercy. If your attitude is sincere enough, then I'll consider sparing your life. Gu Jinglian did not say anything. However, he stood in front of the camera with a cold gaze and an imposing aura. Even though he was wearing a heavy torture device on his head, it did not diminish his courage at all. Arrogant, noble, cold, heroic, and unbearable. Even though Black Panther said so, Gu Jinglian did not have the slightest intention of begging for mercy or kneeling. Even if he died, he would never lower his noble head to anyone, not even a little bit. Black Panther was so angry that he laughed. Are you really not afraid of death at all? What about you? Chapter 3777. Black Leopard lowered his head to look at her and smiled lewdly. He stuck his tongue out and licked her cheek. Of course I'm scared. I advise you to let him go. Otherwise, you'll be the one who dies. Black Leopard laughed even more wildly when he heard that. Who doesn't know how to say tough words? I know how to say tough words too. He raised his hand. In his hand was the button that controlled the torture device. Through this switch, he could kill Gu Jinglian from a distance. Chuho smiled. A sinister glint flashed across her eyes. She reached out and snatched the button from his hand. Using the strength of her fingertips, she crushed the controller. Black Leopard was completely stunned. The next second, Chuho sprung up from her seat. She grabbed his chin with both hands and almost broke his neck in an instant. Black Leopard did not expect Chuho to break free from his grip. He also did not expect that a woman who looked so weak would have the strength to break his neck in an instant. He did not know that Chuho was the former top anti-mafia inspector of Interpol. However, he did not have the chance to find out. Black Leopard's body slid to the ground weakly. His neck joint was broken and deformed. He lay on the ground lifelessly and did not have any reaction. Chuho stood up and used her needle to undo the cuffs on his legs. When Gu Jinglian saw this, he exchanged glances with Qingjio and immediately removed the hood on his head. He walked in front of the camera and saw Chuho looking around. "Where are you?" Gu Jinglian asked her. "Are you in the same room as me?" "I don't think so." Chu-ho shouted loudly, but Gu Jinglian did not hear anything. Can you hear me? I can't. Chu-ho suddenly said, Wait for me. She suddenly disappeared from the camera. Gu Jinglian waited anxiously. After half a minute, Chu-ho said, I think this is a basement. However, there's a secret door. Should I go out from this secret door? No need. Wait for me here. Gu Jinglian was worried that there would be some kind of trap in the room that would hurt her. He turned to Qingjiu and asked, Are you all right? I'm a little injured, but it shouldn't be a big deal. Qingjiu said, Go. I'll wait for you here. Don't worry. Gu Jinglian nodded and began to search the room. He knocked on the walls one by one and found that one of the walls was hollow. He smashed it with his fist. After a while, the wall collapsed, revealing a secret door. The secret door was not locked. He squatted down, opened the secret door, and went in. After going through a long passage, another door appeared in front of him. Gu Jinglian called out tentatively, Chu-ho? Not long after, a response came. I'm here. Gu Jinglian was relieved and said to her, Wait for me there. Don't move. Okay, I'll wait for you. Gu Jinglian went all the way and kicked open the secret door. Finally, he arrived at the inner room. When Chu-ho saw him, she welcomed him excitedly and threw herself into his arms. That's great. You're all right. However, Gu Jinglian was worried about her. Are you hurt? No. Chu-ho raised her hands and showed him. It's just a little bruised on my wrists, but it's nothing serious. Gu Jinglian was completely relieved. Chapter 3778. Gu Jinglian did not dare to slack off. He pulled out his pistol and shot the man's joints 4 times. This way, even if the man was still alive, he would not pose any threat to them. The path that they had taken was a tunnel. It was too narrow. With his condition, he could easily pass through it. However, Chu-ho could not. She was already more than 9 months pregnant. Her belly was too swollen. He would not be at ease if she forced her way through. Gu Jinglian looked around. There must be a door in this place. Chu-ho said, I remember there was a door, but it was locked from the inside. The key seemed to have been swallowed by the black leopard. Swallowed it? Yes. Chu-ho said again. Before you came, I saw him coughing up a lot of blood. I don't know what's going on. He kept saying that he wouldn't live long. Could it be a terminal illness? Gu Jinglian frowned. No wonder he was so unscrupulous. It turned out that he really did not have long to live. He wanted to drag him down with him. He knew that, with his ability, he could not do anything to him. Therefore, he targeted Chu-ho, who was more than 9 months pregnant. Damn it! He had overlooked it. Gu Jinglian asked, How did you fall into his hands? Chu-ho said, Meng Qingxue asked me to meet on WeChat. She said that she wanted to talk to me. How did you know that it was definitely Meng Qingxue? Chu-ho pursed her lips and said, Sorry, I was careless. I really didn't think too much. Listen, Gu Jinglian said in a low voice, the Gu family has made many enemies in the underworld. So, he paused, but did not continue. He suddenly remembered that Chu-ho was about to give birth. In the future, he and Chu-ho would be a family of 6. 1 wife and 4 children. When that time came, it would be troublesome if their enemies came looking for trouble. In the past, the Gu family had many enemies in the underworld. However, he was used to such a life, so he did not mind. However, after experiencing Chu-ho's lesson this time, what about the next time? Would it be Xiao Bao or Lin Shi? Or he didn't want this to happen again. Seeing his grave expression, Chu-ho asked worriedly, Jinglian, what's the matter? I won't let this happen again. Gu Jinglian changed the topic and said, But now is not the time to talk about this. The most important thing now is to think of a way to leave this place. I know where the door is. Where? Chu-ho brought Gu Jinglian to the front of the door. As expected, it was an iron door. However, it was locked from the inside. Chuho said that the key was swallowed by the black leopard. Without the key, they could only open it by force. Gu Jinglian ordered Chuho to step aside. After taking half a step back, he rushed forward and kicked it. With such a majestic force, the two locks trembled, but only loosened a little. Chuho said, "We have to try a few more times." Okay. Gu Jinglian kicked it a few more times, and the iron lock finally broke. He opened the door and took Chuho's hand, reminding her, "Follow me and be careful." Okay. He turned on the flashlight on his phone to illuminate the path ahead, relying on his sense of direction. He felt his way to the entrance of the warehouse and walked in. Qingjiu was still sitting there waiting for him. Chapter 37:79. Gu Jinglian walked over, picked up the gun, and aimed at the center of the chain. Bang! 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 The chain broke with 2 gunshots. "Let's go!" Qingjiu had just stood up when she vaguely heard some movement. It was a series of soft, almost imperceptible sounds. Beep! 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 It was subtle, but it sounded like the sound of some electronic device being activated. However, Chuho was very familiar with this sound. "This sounds like a countdown." Gu Jinglian furrowed his brows and suddenly understood. Oh no! Just now, when he shot the chain, he had probably triggered a time bomb. This was a countdown. "Let's get out of this warehouse." Gu Jinglian took Chuho's hand and rushed out. Qingjiu followed them out of the room. Just as they left the warehouse, they heard a boom behind them. There was an explosion in the warehouse, and the entire ground shook violently. Chuho lost her footing and staggered. Although she tried her best to stabilize her center of gravity, her legs still gave way, and she knelt on the ground. The sharp pebbles pierced her knees mercilessly. She immediately held her lower abdomen and felt something sliding in her stomach. Then something warm seemed to slide down along the base of her thigh. Ouch! There was a pain. Chuho frowned. Gu Jinglian immediately carried her horizontally and ran towards the car parked not far away. Stomach. Chuho clung to his shoulder and muttered weakly, "My stomach seems to hurt. Gu Jinglian suddenly became nervous. Just as he was about to ask, he suddenly felt a warm liquid flowing on his arm. His mind trembled as he lowered his head to look, only to discover that something like water had soaked his sleeve. The night was dark. He couldn't tell at all whether it was blood or something else. However, in his excessive nervousness, he subconsciously thought that it was blood. He also thought that the child couldn't be saved. Qingjiu urged, "Mr. Gu, get in the car first. We're going to the hospital." Gu Jinglian clenched his fists and ran towards the car. He wanted nothing more than to tear Black Panther into pieces. However, now was not the time to think about this. "Keep Chuho close. Don't be afraid. We'll be at the hospital soon." Gu Jinglian didn't even realize how flustered and nervous he was. He didn't know if he was comforting her or himself with his trembling voice. "It'll be fine. It'll be fine." Chuho bit her lip tightly. She was worried that if she made any noise, it would make him even more nervous. Gu Jinglian carried Chuho into the car, and Qingjiu got in as well. Gu Jinglian drove to the hospital. Along the way, Chuho was in unbearable pain. She felt more and more warm fluid flowing out. She raised her hand. Under the moonlight, the water was slightly sticky. She couldn't help but wonder, could it be that my water broke? When Qingjiu heard this, she also became nervous. Her water broke. Then the child must come out quickly. Chuho, on the other hand, was a little uneasy. It's only 9 months, not even 37 weeks. The child isn't even full term yet. Don't worry, as long as we get to the hospital in time, we can definitely save him. However, they had to do it as soon as possible. Otherwise, if the water broke and the child didn't come out, he would suffocate and die in the womb. When Gu Jinglian heard this, he stepped on the accelerator even more. Chapter 3780. At this moment, Chuho was already limp in his arms. In her blurry consciousness, she could only feel the overwhelming pain. She was in so much pain that she broke out in cold sweat and convulsed. Immediately after, she rushed over to the doctors and nurses. She fainted for a few minutes. When she woke up again, she was already lying on the bed. The nurse anxiously pushed her towards the emergency room. "I'm here." She heard Gu Jinglian's voice. She turned her head and saw Gu Jinglian anxiously pushing the bed. He held her hand tightly with a forbearing expression. Chuho pursed her lips. She inexplicably felt like crying. She had experienced countless life and death separations. However, even in the face of death, she was not afraid at all. She did not know fear because she did not have any attachment to life. She was like a cold, killing machine that walked on the edge of death. She had long gotten used to the cold world. However, it was this man, Xiao Bao, who made her understand life again. He also had a greater attachment to this world. Gu Jinglian comforted her and said, "Don't be afraid. I'll wait for you outside." Jinglian, when they reached the door, Gu Jinglian was stopped outside by the nurse. He and Chuho's hands, which were tightly intertwined, were gradually separated. Chuho wanted to say something, but she was already pushed into the emergency room. The cold door separated the two of them. Gu Jinglian watched helplessly as he stood at the door. He held onto his cold sleeves. There were still wet stains on his sleeves. When Uncle Fu rushed over, he saw Gu Jinglian sitting quietly at the door of the emergency room. He walked over and saw that Gu Jinglian seemed to be trembling. There were still wet stains on his arm. "Master, what's wrong?" Gu Jinglian did not seem to have any reaction. His gaze was fixed on one spot, and he did not move. He had never been so afraid. He was afraid that something would happen to Chuho. Gu Jinglian knew that he had always been a cold-hearted person. No matter what happened, it might not be able to move him. But now he was truly afraid. "I'm really scared." Gu Jinglian clasped his arms tightly. He had never hated himself so much before. Damn it! This incident could have been avoided. When Uncle Fu saw how dejected he was, he felt even more anxious and blamed himself. "Master, I was too careless in this matter. I originally thought that Chuho was just going to meet a friend, but I didn't expect." No matter what he said, Gu Jinglian refused to listen. His mind was empty, and so was his gaze. His heart was in a mess, and his body was cold. Just now, he seemed to have seen a trace of blood on the bed where Chuho was lying. It was a ghastly sight. She was bleeding. Now, he could no longer think about whether or not he could keep the child. He was only worried that something might have happened to Chuho. He did not want Chuho to open a door for him, only to have it mercilessly shut again. In a trance, he began to think again. Karma. It turned out that karma really did exist. Sowing good karma, reaping good karma. Sowing evil karma, reaping evil karma. If he had not broken one of Black Leopard's arms back then, Black Leopard would not have hated him. Because of this, if he had not opened the casino, there would not have been all these disputes. There were not so many ifs. But if. Chapter 3781. "Master, don't worry. Chuho will be fine." Uncle Fu sat beside him and comforted him. However, Gu Jinglian couldn't take in much of it. He lowered his head, clenched his arms, and waited quietly. Every second was torture. There were a few times when he even wanted to rush into the emergency room to see what was going on. Could it be that there was a possibility? If anything happened to her, He was afraid that he would lose control of his emotions. If it weren't for Uncle Fu stopping him, he might have rushed in long ago. He didn't know how long he had waited, but the emergency room door still didn't open even when the sky was turning bright. There was no movement at all. Uncle Fu looked at him and felt his heart ache. He had never seen Master lose control like this before. However, there didn't seem to be any other way but to wait. Gu Jinglian sat quietly on the bench. His whole body was like a rock, and he could almost hear the sound of blood flowing in his veins. Rustle, rustle. Unknowingly it was morning. Gu Jinglian vaguely heard some movement. He looked up abruptly and saw that the emergency room door was open. He got up abruptly and rushed over. He grabbed the nurse and asked with a burning gaze, "How is she?" The nurse was shocked by him. She only felt a dark shadow rush over and a gust of cold wind. She shivered and asked, "Are you the patient's family member?" "Yes." "Oh, don't worry. We'll do our best. We'll definitely do our best," the nurse said and hurried away. After a while, she brought the surgical tools back into the operating room and closed the door again. Gu Jinglian frowned, but he didn't understand. What did she mean by doing our best? Could it be that her life was in danger? He didn't dare to think about it. It wasn't until noon that the operating room door finally opened. Gu Jinglian suddenly stood up, only to see the doctor and nurse walking out. Seeing him, a smile appeared on the doctor's tired face. He comforted him and said, "Congratulations, the mother and baby are safe." Uncle Fu stood up in surprise. Gu Jinglian was slow for a few seconds. When he realized that the doctor had said safe, his face froze for a few seconds before he relaxed. "Where is he?" "Cesarean section. The anesthetic hasn't worn off yet. She's too tired and has fainted. She'll wake up after she gets some nutrient fluids." Then Gu Jinglian was about to ask when he vaguely heard the sound of a baby crying from the operating theater. Wow, young and tender, yet full of vitality. A boy and a girl. Although they were born in less than a month, they are both very healthy. Their vital signs are stable. The boy weighs 6 kilograms, and the girl weighs 5 kilograms. When Uncle Fu heard this, his face flushed with excitement. He said to Gu Jinglian, "Congratulations, old master. Mother and child are safe. Mother and daughter are safe. Aya, I can finally breathe a sigh of relief." After a while, Chuho was wheeled out. The two nurses also walked out, each carrying a child. However, Gu Jinglian wasn't in the mood to care about the two children. Instead, he walked nervously to the bed to check on Chuho's condition. She seemed to be asleep, but she also seemed to have fainted. Just as the doctor said, she was exhausted and hadn't woken up yet. Chapter 3782. Uncle Fu, on the other hand, walked to the nurse's side and looked at the newborn baby in the swaddling clothes with a gratified smile. Mother and child were safe. Mother and daughter were safe. It was a false alarm, but everyone was happy. Uncle Fu asked the nurse, "Can I carry them?" The nurse nodded and carefully handed one of the babies to Uncle Fu. Now, the two newborn babies' faces were wrinkled, thin, and small. Their faces were red, and even a little purple. He asked worriedly, "Why are their faces so red?" "It's normal. Because they're premature babies, their amniotic fluid broke first. They're too thin." "Haha, because they're already 36 weeks old. They're not far from full term. This weight is very healthy." The nurse's mouth was also sweet, so she naturally did not forget to say a few good words. "You're carrying a boy in your arms. His eyebrows and eyes look like his mother's." "Oh, a boy." Uncle Fu looked at the baby in the other nurse's arms. "That should be a girl." "Yes, girls all look like their fathers." "It's good to look like their fathers. They're beautiful like their fathers." Uncle Fu held the baby lovingly and kept sighing in his heart. God bless old master, bless Chu-ho, bless the Gu family. Gu Jinglian was still holding Chu-ho's hand and did not let go. The nurse reminded him carefully, "We're going to send her to the room soon. If you want to accompany her later, you can go directly to the room." She didn't suffer any other injuries, right? No, we've already checked. Other than the abrasions on her palms and knees, there's no other problem. She just accidentally fell and broke her amniotic fluid, so she had to perform a C-section early. I see. Gu Jinglian finally calmed down a little. He watched as the nurse pushed Chu-ho away. When he turned around, the two nurses also took the baby away. Because it was a premature baby, they still had to send it for a series of examinations. Gu Jinglian and Uncle Fu arrived at the intensive care unit. The moment they entered, they saw the doctor and a few nurses standing in front of the bed. They were holding a notepad and recording something. The room was very big. It was a VIP room, other than a large bed. There were various detection equipment, 2 nursery boxes, a living room, an open kitchen and a bar counter, and 2 separate bathrooms. One was for pregnant women, and the other was for family members or visiting friends. Gu Jinglian sat by the bed for a while. After a while, the nurse came to inform him that because the baby was born prematurely, he had to be kept in the incubator for a few days before he could be brought over. If he wanted to visit her, he could only go to the nursery. They could only be sent back after their vital signs were confirmed to be stable. Gu Jinglian nodded. Uncle Fu said to him, "Old master, you just need to stay here. I'll take care of everything else." Don't worry. He would take care of everything else, including Black Panther's matter. In the afternoon, Chu-ho slowly woke up. Uncle Fu had already transferred 2 nannies to take care of Chu-ho. Chu-ho's body was a little weak after giving birth. When she woke up, Gu Jinglian personally fed her some liquid food. After eating some nutritious porridge and oatmeal, Chu-ho felt sleepy again and wanted to sleep. Because it was a C-section, she could not get out of bed for a while. Chu-ho felt a little regretful. Chapter 3783. Gu Jinglian saw that her eyelids were so heavy that they were about to droop, but she was still trying her best to stay awake. "If you're tired, go to sleep. I'll stay with you." Chu-ho was amused when she heard that. "You're not going anywhere?" "Yes, of course." Chu-ho refused to sleep. She was afraid that when she opened her eyes, the sky would be dark and he would be gone. She would be lying on the bed, all alone. This feeling was too unbearable. Gu Jinglian knew that she was a little uneasy, so he took the initiative to tell her that he would not go anywhere. He did not expect that there would be times when she felt insecure. However, he could not be bothered to tease her now. He only felt a little sorry for her. Chu-ho naturally closed her eyes in relief when she heard that. She was in too much pain. Moreover, the medicine was slowly fading away, and the pain was slowly returning. When Gu Jinglian heard that the cesarean section had required 6 layers of stitches, his heart ached even more. He also wanted to accompany her to recuperate. In the evening, when Uncle Fu arrived, he also brought Xiao Bao and Lin Shi over. Chu-ho woke up, and the scar started to hurt. After all, there were 6 layers of stitches. However, Chu-ho was more tolerant of pain, so she did not make much noise. Uncle Fu was extremely surprised. "Don't you feel pain? It doesn't hurt that much. It's much easier than removing the bullet without anesthesia." Chu-ho said it casually. In fact, the pain was very painful. However, when it came to pain, one should not pay attention to it. Otherwise, the pain would only worsen. Pretending to be relaxed was the best way to deal with the pain. At least, it could divert one's attention. Xiao Bao and Lin, she saw Chu-ho lying on the bed, and asked her about her well-being anxiously. "Mom, is it really not painful? It won't hurt if you sing a song for Mom." When Lin Shi heard that, she immediately became nervous. Don't. Xiao Bao's singing is terrible. Xiao Bao was just about to show off his singing skills when Lin Shi immediately pulled the rug out from under him. He suddenly showed a displeased expression. What do you mean it's terrible? It's not like I've shown you my true strength. Stop singing. You can't even sing the nursery rhymes in kindergarten. You have no talent in singing. Xiao Bao. Chuho looked at Xiao Bao's aggrieved expression. She wanted to laugh, but she didn't dare to. She was afraid that it would affect Scar. She held back her laughter and said, Xiao Bao, talk to your mother. Don't sing. Mom, do you believe what Lin Shi said? Xiao Bao defended herself, feeling wronged. My singing isn't bad. All right. Chuho suddenly turned his head and looked at Gu Jinglian. He asked curiously, Have you seen the two little guys? They were sent to the nursery. I haven't seen them yet. You must really want to see them. Chuho said, Go and see the two little guys. Xiao Bao and Lin Shi are with me. Gu Jinglian nodded. In fact, he had wanted to see the two little guys for a long time. It was just that before Uncle Fu came. He was worried about Chuho and couldn't bear to leave. Now that Uncle Fu was here, he was relieved. Gu Jinglian walked to the nursery. In the huge nursery, there was only one nursery box. The other little guy was lying inside. He pushed the door open and walked in. In the nursery box, the two little guys were lying facing each other. Their two little hands were tightly held together. Such a heartwarming scene warmed Gu Jinglian's heart. Chapter 3784. The two little guys did not have much strength in their little hands, but they held each other's little hands tightly. Their eyes were closed, and their small chests rose and fell gently. It was quiet but warm. It was as if nothing could separate them. Gu Jinglian pushed the door open and walked in. He walked to the side of the nursery box. In the nursery box, the two little guys were lying quietly with their eyes closed. It was hard to imagine that just a day ago they were quietly curled up in Chuho's stomach. Now, the two little guys were solemnly meeting him. Gu Jinglian looked at them. His eyes were gentle, and the love in his eyes was endless. He was really thinking about how to bring a beautiful world to them. He stood in the nursery for a long time. He could not bear to leave for too long. He also had a new understanding of the definition of a father. In the past, when Xiao Bao appeared in his life, this child seemed to have appeared out of thin air. He did not even experience the process of waiting and accompanying. This child seemed to have fallen from the sky. Therefore, he did not have a clear understanding of the concept of a father. However, these two children were different. From the beginning of the pregnancy to accompanying Chuho throughout the pregnancy, he could even recall every detail of Chuho's pregnancy, from the anticipation to the soul-stirring wait, and then the two little guys were born out of thin air. It could be said that he had experienced the joys and sorrows of it, but more than that, he felt happiness. He finally understood what a father was. He also had a deeper understanding of the concept of fatherly love. He stood there for a long, long time before he reluctantly left. However, fortunately, the two little guys were hardworking enough and were soon reunited with them. 2 days later, the nurse carried the two little guys into the room. She said that the two little guys' vital signs had stabilized, so the mother and children were reunited. The ward was a luxurious ward, so there was a special nursery. The hospital even provided milk powder and bottles, as well as various products needed by the babies. This also saved Uncle Fu the trouble of purchasing at the last minute. After all, the birth of the children this time was too sudden. No one was prepared. Gu Jinglian was even mentally prepared to lose them. However, he did not expect that the mother and children would be safe. This was an unexpected gain. It was a blessing in disguise. When Chuho saw the children being carried over, she immediately struggled to sit up and wanted to carry the children. However, Gu Jinglian was worried about the scar from her cesarean section and could not bear to let her carry them. Therefore, he and Uncle Fu each carried one child and sat by the bed to inspect her. Chuho did not know whether to laugh or cry when she saw how careful Gu Jinglian was. It's not as exaggerated as you think. I'll be able to take care of the stitches. But you can't be careless. Uncle, Gu Jinglian, that scar on your stomach. I almost forgot about it. Chui's lips curled into a smile. Then should I be moved to tears? She did not say so much and hurriedly went to see the two children. They had removed the placenta and their faces had returned to their healthy complexion. They were white and tender. They had inherited Gu Jinglian's skin color. Gu Jinglian's skin was very fair, even fairer than hers. Chuho was once very jealous. He was a grown man, but his skin was soft and tender. Chapter 3785. The more Chuho looked at them, the more she liked them. Uncle Fu egged her on. Take a guess. Which one is the boy, and which one is the girl? Chuho rebuked. How can I tell? Just take a guess. It doesn't matter if you're wrong. Only then did Chuho look at the two little guys seriously. The one that Gu Jinglian was holding had big eyes, which resembled him. Her nose was tall and pointy, which resembled him too. Chuho was a little surprised. Most children, especially those who were just born, had collapsed noses. However, hers was different. The contours of her nose could already be seen, and her thin lips looked a little like hers. Her eyes were too beautiful. Her eyes were slightly open, half closed. Even though her long eyelashes were closed, one could still vaguely see her eyes that were like a mirror rippling with a moving luster. She resembled him. When she thought about how Gu Jinglian was holding her like a baby and couldn't bear to let go, she came to a conclusion. This must be the younger sister. Because they were fraternal twins, the older brother was born first, and the younger sister was born more than 10 minutes later. Gu Jinglian was a little surprised. How can you tell? The two Xiaobao babies didn't actually look very similar. Because they were fraternal twins, their faces were very different. Chuho said, I saw how you were holding her like a baby, so I guessed that she was the younger sister. Everyone knew that Gu Jinglian doted on the little princess more. Hence, Chuho's guess was indeed correct. Gu Jinglian smiled and hugged the baby girl even tighter. Chuho said, Look at her. How much does she resemble you? Yeah, you don't have to tell me. I can tell too. Chuho turned to look at her older brother. At this moment, her older brother was sleeping comfortably in Uncle Fu's arms. He had a pacifier in his mouth, and there were traces of saliva dripping from the corner of his lips. He was sleeping so peacefully. Her brother's silhouette was quite similar to hers. Chuho had a heroic look that most women did not have. She had beautiful almond-shaped eyes and deep eyebrows. Although the bridge of her nose was not as prominent as her younger sister's, one could imagine that when she grew up, her nose would be as tall as hers. Other than that, the curve of his jaw was like Gu Jinglian's, arrogant and angular. These two children really didn't disappoint. They had inherited the best parts of their parents. Uncle Fu carried the child and suddenly said, You haven't thought of a name for the child yet, right? Yes. Then what about your pet name? Chuho said proudly, I'll come up with a nickname. See, I'm the one with the best intentions. I've already thought about it. Gu Jinglian glanced at her. When did you get up behind my back? Do I need to carry you? Chuho said angrily, You usually read so many books. When I ask you to come up with a name, you always say that you want to wait until the child is born. However, Gu Jinglian said, In the Gu family, there is a particular way to name a child. In the Gu family, the children are all named according to the poem. When it came to Gu Jinglian's generation, they used the poem, "The heavens embroidered a flourishing scene. Everywhere the silky silk makes the road busy." Only the direct line of descent could use the word Jing as a name. As for Gu Xingzi, he was born of a concubine after all, so he did not use the word Jing. In Xiao Bao's generation, the word Cheng was used. It was based on the saying, "Generations are long, and Pai will inherit the glory of the ancestors." In this set of words, every 4 words was a generation. The people of each generation could choose one of the 4 words to use, regardless of order or priority. Chapter 3786. Chuho said, if it's a girl, her pet name will be Qianqian. How about that? Uncle Fu said in surprise. Sounds good. Chuho was pleased with himself. He glanced at Gu Jinglian and thought that since he treasured his daughter so much, he must be very picky about pet names. Seeing that he seemed to agree, he said, the older brother will be called Rue. How about that? Rue? Yes. Okay. Uncle Fu nodded, looking very satisfied. Gu Jinglian did not express such an opinion. The pet names of the brother and sister were decided just like that. How is it? It's good, right? Chuho had flipped through many books before coming up with these 2 names. Gu Jinglian nodded to the point. Yes, it's better than the name, Xiao Bao. Chuho blushed and cleared her throat awkwardly. She quickly changed the topic. Gu Jinglian, what name do you plan to name them? I've already thought of the girl's name. Gu Jinglian looked at the little girl in his arms who was squinting her eyes sleepily. He smiled and rubbed the tip of her nose lovingly. Linga, the flying dragon, leaps over the auspicious clouds. The soaring crane rides the lingering wind. Linga came from this poem, from Tang Wu Yun's 24 Immortal Poems. Chuho was a little surprised. So you've already thought of a name? No, Gu Jinglian said, I thought of it at the last minute. Huh, at the last minute? Chuho was very surprised. She did not expect Gu Jinglian's literary attainment to be so high that he could casually come up with a poem. Moreover, the name was better than the one she had racked her brains to think of. Chuho thought about it. It was not that she had not considered coming up with a name. However, the few names that she thought of the best were Gu Yishuan, Gu Junfeng, and Gu Tianni. In the end, these names were really too common. She had also thought of a few girls' names, but they were not as lively as Linga's. Then, have you thought of a name for your brother? Gu Jinglian deliberated for a moment. No one knew what he was thinking. His gaze suddenly fell outside the window, and a name came out of nowhere. Gu Xinghan. Xinghan Kong was like this, and Ning Jixin had memories. Xinghan, even Uncle Fu was stunned. Chuho repeated it a few times. Xinghan, Xinghan. It's so nice. She only thought that it sounded nice, but she didn't understand the meaning behind Gu Jinglian's words. Fu Bo, however, understood. Gu Xinghan and Xiao Bao were called Gu Qingzi. Together, they formed Xingzi. Uncle Fu narrowed his eyes and smiled. He looked at the boy in his arms and said softly, Rue, your father gave you Xinghan. Do you like this name? It's so nice. Chuho was satisfied with these 2 names from the bottom of his heart. The night gradually darkened. Chuho went to bed early. Because the incision had yet to heal, the 2 little fellows were fed artificial milk. However, Chuho's milk did not seem to be enough. Even though they hired a breast enhancer and fed her fish soup every day, the milk was still not enough. Hence, Gu Jinglian hired 2 nannies. Chuho put down the heavy burden and focused on recuperating. Because it was a cesarean section, unlike a natural birth, her body was severely damaged. Even she felt a little indignant for her body. This body had followed her through life and death and suffered too many injuries. Now, There was another scar on her stomach. However, this scar was sacred. This meant that she had brought 2 brand new lives into this world. Linga Xinghan, Chapter 3787. Soon, the day came for Chu-Ho to remove the stitches. When the stitches were removed, she did not cry out in pain at all. The nurse was shocked. Many women who had undergone a cesarean section would moan a few times when the stitches were removed, no matter how strong they were. However, this woman was holding her phone and looking at it without frowning at all. She was too strong. Little did they know that this bit of pain was really nothing to Chu-Ho. After the stitches were removed, she stayed in the hospital for a few days before finally returning to the Gu family. When she returned to the Gu family, Chu-Ho felt refreshed. At least, she did not have to smell the disinfectant in the hospital anymore. Although the smell of the disinfectant was not pungent, it was not intimate either. She should be considered the least burdensome mother. She did not have to worry about waking up at night to coax the children, nor did she have to think about breastfeeding them all the time. Other than her flat stomach, she did not seem to have changed at all. During the confinement period, the 2 little fellows were taken care of by a professional nanny. Moreover, Gu Jinglian, the new nanny, was even more energetic than her in taking care of them. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, when the children were clearly not crying, he would get up and go to the nursery to see what was going on. If they were not crying, they would cry because of him, especially Linge. Gu Jinglian carried her the most because he carried her the most. His sister was the closest to him. As a result, others did not have much of a chance to carry her. Firstly, Gu Jinglian explicitly forbade anyone from carrying his sister, except for Chu-Ho and the nanny. Even Uncle Fu didn't have this privilege, no matter how hard he tried. Chu-Ho felt that there was a ghost in her heart. She grabbed Uncle Fu and asked curiously why Gu Jinglian liked girls so much. Uncle Fu also shook his head. The Gu Jinglian of the past was very different from the present. In the past, not to mention liking a girl, even if it was a child, the master would always keep a distance from them, for fear that he wouldn't be able to avoid them. The changes brought about by marriage and children could not be explained in a little bit. In short, Gu Jinglian had completely become a slave to his daughter. She was such a young child. He clearly knew that she could not learn how to speak, but he hugged Qian and sat there for the whole morning. Over and over again, he patiently taught her how to call him Daddy. Qian, on the other hand, was still so young that she did not understand Gu Jinglian's intentions. She was so amused by his repeated calls of Daddy that she kicked her legs and giggled. Seeing her smile, Gu Jinglian smiled as well. There was a small balcony in the nursery that could fit a recliner. Whenever the sun shone brightly, Gu Jinglian would hug Qian and lean on the recliner to bask in the sun. Gu Jinglian was so tall. Compared to his tall and slender figure, Qian was curled up in his arms like a newborn kitten. The contrast was stark. Sometimes, Chu-Ho even felt that Gu Jinglian could support her with one hand. He wondered how tall Qian would be when she grew up. No matter who she looked like, she would be at least 175 meters tall. However, she was still small now. Such a small and squishy ball lying in Gu Jinglian's arms was extremely comfortable. The bright and beautiful sun shone on the father and daughter. It was beautiful, quiet, and happy. However, Rui, who was in the crib, was treated differently. It was a little ignored. Therefore, hugging Rui and basking in the sun naturally became Chu-Ho's task. However, Chu-Ho did not value girls over boys, like Gu Jinglian. Whether it was a boy or a girl, she liked and loved them all. Chapter 3788. The twins had telepathy. Did it really exist? Chu-Ho had been thinking about this question. That was because no matter if it was Qian or Ruirui, as long as one of them started crying, the other would start bawling no matter how far away they were. At first, Chuho didn't believe it. Once, the confinement nanny took Ruirui to another room to change his diaper. Qian was sleeping soundly in the crib when Chuho saw her little hand grab at empty air. Then, as if she couldn't grab anything, she felt a little uneasy. She opened her little mouth and started crying sadly. Chuho picked her up, her heart aching. She tried to coax her, but she couldn't. She continued crying. On the other side, the confinement nanny came over with Ruirui, who was also crying. She asked anxiously, "Oh, why is the baby crying so hard?" When she saw that Qian was crying too, the confinement nanny felt a headache coming on. Ruirui started crying as soon as the diaper was changed. The confinement nanny thought it was strange. He didn't cry when the diaper was not changed after breastfeeding. Now that the diaper was changed into a clean one, he started crying pitifully. She tried to coax him for a long time, but she didn't know what to do. Only then did Chuho realize that there was a faint telepathic connection between the siblings. Otherwise, why was one crying and the other crying as well? She thought it was a coincidence, but she didn't expect that there was more to it. The two little guys were very clingy. The brother was clingy to the sister, and the sister was clingy to the brother. When they fell asleep, the brother held the sister's hand tightly. No matter who tried to pull them away, they couldn't. After all, the child was still so young and hadn't fully developed. No one dared to use force. Chuho also secretly tried to pry Ruirui's fingers away. Ruirui's fingers were pried away, but he immediately held onto hers. His hand was so small, but he held her hand tightly, just enough to fill it. Ruirui mistook her hand for his sister's and fell asleep peacefully. On the other side, Qian felt that her hand was empty. She was actually showing signs of waking up. Her hands started to move around, as if she was searching for something. However, no matter how she searched, she could not touch her brother's hand. She seemed to be a little uneasy as she opened her little mouth and started to whimper in grievance. Chuho asked the confinement nanny to take Qian away. Not long after Qian was taken away, Ruirui closed his eyes and started crying. Chuho was truly stunned. She carried Ruirui to the confinement nanny, only to find Qian crying in the confinement nanny's arms. Could emotions really be sensed through telepathy? Not only that, once Gu Jinglian was holding Qian in his arms as they basked in the sun on the balcony. No one knew what Gu Jinglian did to tease his sister, but Qian let out a string of bell-like laughter. At this moment, Ruirui was lying in the cradle, holding Chuho's hand and sleeping quietly, as if sensing something. The corners of Rui's mouth curled up slightly. Although he didn't laugh out loud, it was a genuine smile. If this was a coincidence, it would be fine. However, every time it happened, Chuho couldn't help but believe that something as miraculous as telepathy really existed. When Chuho told Gu Jinglian about this, Gu Jinglian didn't believe it at first. It wasn't until he experienced it for himself that he finally believed that telepathy between siblings really existed. Chapter 3789. Under the meticulous care of Aunt Chin and Aunt Fu, the short confinement period passed without a hitch. By chance, Chuho found out that Gu Jinglian had closed down all the casinos under the Gu family's name. She was a little surprised and did not know why he did that. Although the casino was not a lifeline business for the Gu family, it was enough to affect the Gu family's bones. Gu Jinglian did not mention this to Chuho, and Uncle Fu only mentioned it by chance. Seeing Chuho's stunned expression, he was a little surprised. "Didn't old master tell you?" "No, I didn't know about this." Uncle Fu sighed and shook his head. Old Master is scared. Scared? Do you know the man who kidnapped you that day? Chu-ho nodded when she heard this. She still had some lingering fear when she thought about what happened that day, especially when Gu Jinglian put on the torture mask without hesitation. Her heart was in her throat. This man, such an arrogant and insufferably arrogant man, was actually willing to give up his life for her and their child. She had never thought that the man who was once hailed as a devil would have such a soft side. Scared? Chu-ho did not understand Uncle Fu's meaning for a while. Uncle Fu said that when Chu-ho was still in the hospital, Gu Jinglian had already sent people to settle the matter with Black Panther. The matter with Black Panther was not very complicated. Qin-jiu was not seriously injured. Her bones were fractured, but the nails were not too deep. If it were not for Gu Jinglian's courage at that time, he would not have been able to protect such a loyal subordinate. Most of the Gu family's enemies were established because of the casino's business. Other than some small fries, there were also some big shots gambling in the casinos under the Gu family's name. These big shots would lose tens of millions or hundreds of millions in one night. In the blink of an eye, they might go bankrupt. It just so happened that these big shots were all sore losers. Because of this casino, the Gu family had made many enemies in the underworld. In the past, Gu Jinglian did not take it seriously because he was alone at that time. However, now that he had a wife and children, he had to reconsider this issue. If it were anyone else, they might not have let go of such a rich bowl of soup so easily. After all, the casino's daily income was in the hundreds of millions. Moreover, this could be considered a net profit, a huge profit. Who would be willing to give up such a big deal? Perhaps Black Panther's vote had really frightened Gu Jinglian. He was no longer willing to use Chu-ho and his child as a wager or bargaining chip. He could not afford to lose, so he carefully considered this matter. Other than the Gu Corporation, the main source of income for the Gu family was the casino. He was determined to ban the casinos and rearrange the structure of the Gu family. He wanted to focus on the family. He wanted to spend more time with his child as he grew up, especially Qianqian. The birth of his daughter seemed to have injected an incomparably soft medicine into his hard heart. He could not wait to be with his daughter every day and watch her grow up little by little. Gu Jinglian only told Uncle Fu about this matter. The news was also released in the underworld. When they learned that the casinos were going to be banned, everyone was puzzled and shocked. They did not understand why Gu Jinglian did this. Chapter 3790. Although Chu-ho was a little surprised to know that Gu Jinglian wanted to close down all the casinos under his name, she understood his decision and silently supported it. Actually, I feel that one doesn't need to be rich in life. Countless treasures and mountains of gold and silver are not as important as the safety of one's family. When Uncle Fu heard this, he agreed wholeheartedly. That's right. Old Master didn't know what these words meant before, but now he finally knows. Uncle Fu didn't know why, but he was inexplicably moved. Suddenly, he sighed and said, Chu-ho, thank you so much. Chu-ho looked up in surprise and saw Uncle Fu holding his sleeves and silently wiping his tears. Chu-ho had never seen Uncle Fu lose his composure like this. This old man, who was over 50 years old, had always been cheerful and smiling, no matter how bad the situation was. He would never shed a single tear. She was a little shocked and quickly stood up. Puzzled, she asked, What's wrong? Uncle Fu, why are you suddenly crying? I never dared to hope that old Master would have his own family in the past. This child has been cold since he was young and doesn't have any concept of kinship. But, that day I saw old Master holding Qianqian and sunbathing on the balcony. He was holding such a small baby, so tenderly, and there was such a doting look in his eyes. I actually didn't dare to believe that everything in front of me was real. Gu Jinglian had really changed too much. In the past, Gu Jinglian was cold, heartless, and unwilling to stay for any woman. Although Chu Ho didn't feel much, because to her, Gu Jinglian's changes were gradual and traceable. However, if she were to compare Gu Jinglian to when she had just arrived at the Gu family, and if she were to compare his attitude towards Qianqian with his attitude towards Xiao Bao, the difference was immediately apparent. Old Master wouldn't have been like this in the past. Old Master had changed, but Uncle Fu felt extremely gratified. He was thankful for Chu Ho's appearance in Gu Jinglian's life, which resulted in such a butterfly effect and made Old Master more mature. Chu Ho smiled and did not say anything on the surface. He just lowered his head, but all of a sudden, thousands of thoughts ran through his mind. She also thanked him. She was also grateful to Gu Jinglian for appearing in her life, no matter how much they had opposed each other in the past. Regardless, the two of them were once at daggers drawn. However, the happiness she had now was so rare and precious. Therefore, he had to treasure it. Suddenly, the respectful voices of a few subordinates came from the courtyard. "Master, you're back." Chu Ho stood up and walked to the window. He saw Gu Jinglian walking into the courtyard. She smiled and picked up Qianqian and Ruerue. She carefully carried them downstairs and brought the two children to meet him. "You're back." Gu Jinglian heard the sound and looked over. Under the sunset, Chu Ho was carrying a little one in each hand and staring at him with a smile. He smiled and walked to her side. He took Qianqian from her hands and gently hugged the child in his arms. He coaxed her, looked up, and gently kissed her forehead. "Are you tired?" she asked. Gu Jinglian shook his head. "No." Chapter 3791. Spring. Xiangshan Film City. The production team of Demon Eye had a grand opening ceremony. Demonic Eye, a movie adapted from the famous Heavy Snow, caused a huge uproar when the final makeup photos were released. Among them, Hua Jin played the male lead in Demonic Eyes. He was a nine-tailed fox demon dressed in a blood-red robe, with long silver hair and a devilish look on his face whenever he looked back. Many fans of the original novel were looking forward to seeing him. Demon Eyes was a fantasy idol drama. The female lead was played by a new starlet, Bai Lu, who was promoted by Huaxing Film and Television. She was the female lead who played the role of a demon slayer. This original novel was a best-selling fantasy masterpiece that sold tens of millions of copies. Moreover, after it was confirmed that it was going to be a movie, the news of Hua Jin as the male lead was released, and the production team successfully received a huge amount of investment. After the opening ceremony, the production team started the long shooting in a low-key manner. In the production team, in the dressing room, Hua Jin was wearing an ancient robe and holding a special company proposal in his hand. His eyelids were blinking rapidly. He glanced through the words on it and read out loud, "Fan meeting?" "Yes." The manager nodded and said excitedly, "Hua Jin, the production team is holding a grand fan meeting. Didn't you endorse an LP cell phone some time ago? This time, the cell phone manufacturer and the production team are holding a fan meeting. 10 lucky fans will be selected from the new flagship cell phone, and they will have the opportunity to attend the Demon Eye production team's visit." Hua Jin said, "Can I refuse?" He wasn't willing to do such a strenuous and thankless task. The manager's face fell. "But I've already promised the director." "Are you crazy?" Hua Jin endured it and said through gritted teeth, "Even if it's a fan meeting, can't you at least invite a few normal fans?" He remembered the last time he attended the premiere of a movie, and a lucky fan was randomly selected to go up on stage. In the end, when the fan went up on stage and he walked over with a smile, the fan's eyes rolled back and she fainted on the ground, twitching all over. Hua Jin was dumbfounded. He did not remember what happened after that. He only knew that the scene was very chaotic at the time. It was not until the ambulance came to send the fan to the hospital that he learned that the little fan had epilepsy. Once she was agitated or overly stimulated, she would have seizures. Afterwards, Hua Jin had no choice but to visit her a few times. But as he was worried that her fans would act up again, he could only visit her through the window. Such a thing did not happen by chance. One after another, he watched helplessly as more than a dozen fans fainted in front of him. This cycle repeated over and over again, and he was already numb to the point where he could not be any more numb. Fans must be very excited to see their idols. All right, I'll leave it to you to decide. After saying that, Hua Jin frowned with a headache. He rested his chin in his hand and closed his eyes to rest. After rounds of screening, the fans were finally given the opportunity to visit their idols on set. A week later, Hua Jin had just finished filming, and the stage staff brought him to a painting boat. It was already nighttime. The stars in the night sky were reflected on the surface of the lake. The night and the lake seemed to merge into one. Chapter 37:92. Before Hua Jin could change out of his clothes, the crew came over to rush him. The fans have been waiting for a long time. Our friends from the media are here too. Hence, without waiting for him to change his clothes, the staff hurriedly brought him to the ship. When Hua Jin arrived at the boat, the fans had been waiting for a long time. Hua Jin had just boarded the boat when he heard a deafening cheer. Hua Jin! Ah, 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 ah. It's my Hua Hua. Oh, my God. It's the real person. It's the real person. It's really Hua Jin in real life. I feel like he looks better than on TV. Does my idol have a natural beauty physique? Why do I feel like he's glowing? One of the fans, who was in her 20s, was so emotional that she held the jade pendant around her neck and murmured with tears streaming down her face, "Mom, I've finally seen the real Hua Jin." Sob, sob, sob. I've completed your last wish. Your soul can rest in peace now. Out of the corner of his eye, Hua Jin caught a glimpse of an old lady standing up shakily and looking at him excitedly. Her originally white hair seemed to be glowing with vitality. He was so shocked that he took half a step back. He grabbed his assistant and asked, "Oh my God, who's this old lady?" "She's your fan?" "What? Do I have fans this old?" Not only that, if it weren't for the age restriction, an 8-year-old kid would have come too. Among all the fans, only one girl was calm. Rather than calm, it was more appropriate to say that she was dumbfounded. She was wearing a black and white dress. Her soft hair was neatly tied up. Her delicate oval face was not stained with any makeup, but her looks were not inferior to those glamorous actresses. It seemed like she was one of the more normal fans. Hua Jin was just feeling comforted when he saw the girl suddenly stand up. Amidst the crowd's exclamations, she walked in front of him. "Why are you here?" Hua Jin's face was full of question marks. "Oh, please, this woman looks so normal. Is there something wrong with her brain?" It was his fan visiting event. If it wasn't him, who else could it be? Hua Jin's lips stiffened. The girl spoke again. "Can't we see Tang Yu when we visit the crew?" "Tang Yu?" Hua Jin was a little embarrassed. He turned around and asked his assistant, "Who is Tang Yu?" "Oh, I think it's the newbie who plays a supporting role in the same crew as us." The assistant thought for a moment. "The one who played the female lead's senior brother, Song? Tang Yu." Oh, Hua Jin just remembered that Tang Yu should be a newcomer who was selected through the auditions. He didn't seem to be famous. He asked curiously, "Does Tang Yu have a fan meeting?" "I don't think so." "Then Just as the girl was about to say something, she came to her senses and took out the invitation letter from her bag. When she looked at it, she realized that she had read it wrong. This was Hua Jin's visit on set. She originally thought she would be able to visit the entire crew, but he couldn't see Tang Yu. The girl couldn't help but feel disheartened. She said, "I want to get off the boat." When Hua Jin heard this, he raised his eyebrows and kindly made way for her. Just as she brushed past Hua Jin, the girl said faintly, "I think there must be something behind Tang Yu's failure to be selected as the male lead." Chapter 3793. The girl said angrily, "In my heart, Tang Yu is the real Fox Emperor Phoenix." With that, she walked out of the cabin. With a frown, Hua Jin turned around and stared fixedly at her back view. His face was tense. Before Tang Yu's debut, he was a famous internet celebrity model. With his handsome appearance, he was the book model for the original Heavy Snow. In the official stage play, Tang Yu played the role of the male lead, Phoenix. In the movie and TV series, Hua Jin stood out from the netizens' votes and became the male lead candidate. Tang Yu, who was not popular, could only be reduced to a supporting role. Hua Jin's face was livid. He walked over and grabbed her hand tightly and said in a deep voice, "You're not allowed to go. You haven't made yourself clear." "Let go of me. What do you mean by there must be a conspiracy?" The hull suddenly shook. The girl was standing on the edge of the boat. The boat had started moving, and the rope connecting the shore had long been cut. With the slight shaking, Hua Jin only felt a burst of instability under his feet. The girl who was pulled by his sleeve lost her center of gravity and fell toward the boat. The girl cried out softly and subconsciously reached out to grab everything in her hand. Suddenly, she caught Hua Jin's sleeve. Hua Jin only felt that he lost his center of gravity. The two of them fell heavily into the lake. In the lake, bubbles were rolling. Hua Jin was wearing a fiery red fur coat. In the cold lake, he was as gorgeous as a demon. He saw the girl sinking to the bottom of the lake and immediately reached out to grab her hand. The girl struggled hard. She didn't know how to swim at all. In her nervousness, a steady stream of lake water poured into her mouth and nose. It seemed that she was about to run out of oxygen. At this moment, Hua Jin swam to her side, raised the remaining water in his mouth, and passed it to her mouth. "Hua Jin? Hua Jin, wake up." Somehow, she felt like someone was slapping her face. "Hua Jin, wake up." Then there was a huge pressure that kept suppressing her abdomen. Liang Yin only felt a surge in her chest. Then, almost reflexively, she opened her mouth and vomited the lake water that blocked her lungs and trachea. Great, it's okay. The assistant was ecstatic. She hugged her body and cheered for a while. "That's great. Hua Jin, you're finally awake. I thought something happened to you." Sob, sob, sob. "If anything happens to you, I really don't know how to explain it." Something happened? What if? She didn't understand. Also, who was the woman who was crying beside her ear? Why did she keep calling her Hua Jin? She wasn't. Liang Yin opened her misty eyes and felt a sharp pain in her throat. She coughed, but the voice that came out was that of an unfamiliar man. She widened her eyes in shock. Instinctively, she reached out to touch her throat, but she suddenly felt her Adam's apple. Adam's apple? Why did she have an Adam's apple? Liang Yin was so shocked that she couldn't say a word. When the surrounding staff saw that she had woken up, they immediately crowded around her and wrapped her in a huge blanket. "It's cold. Don't catch a cold." Chapter 3794. Hua Jin. Was it her imagination? Why were the staff surrounding her and calling her Hua Jin? "Wait," she said nervously. She wanted to say something, but she didn't know how to express herself. She actually wanted to ask what had happened, where was this place, and who was she? The last question was indeed a little unimaginable. However, even though she found it hard to understand, she still wanted to ask, why did her voice change? Was she dreaming? Liang Yin stood up in a daze and instinctively wrapped the blanket tightly around herself. However, she heard someone say, "This girl doesn't seem to have woken up yet. What's going on? Why isn't the ambulance here yet? Could it be that something happened? If there's an accident, it'll be difficult to handle." Liang Yin looked in the direction of the voice and saw a group of people surrounding a person discussing animatedly. She narrowed her eyes and saw a pair of familiar shoes. Before she could react, the staff pushed her and said, "Huajin, don't just stand there. Hurry back to the hotel and take a hot shower. If you fall sick from the cold, it'll delay the trip again." She was carried away in a daze. Behind her, after a round of emergency treatment, the girl who was surrounded finally opened her eyes slowly. "The hot water is ready. Take a rest after you're done with your shower. Don't worry, we'll take care of everything after this." After the assistant finished speaking, he left. Liang Yin stood dumbfounded in front of the mirror. The scene before her eyes was so strange that her mind was in a mess, and she couldn't get her head around it. She took another step closer to the mirror and reached out her hand in disbelief. When her fingertips touched the surface of the mirror, the cold touch made her retract her hand in shock. Liang Yin looked at the handsome face reflected in the mirror. Even though the lake water had washed away the makeup on her face, this beautiful face that most men didn't have was still a constant reminder that this wasn't her face. This wasn't Hua Jin's face. How did she become Hua Jin? What was going on? What was going on? Dream on. It must be a dream. Liang Yin laughed dryly for a while. Suddenly, she stretched out her hand and gently rubbed her face. She rubbed it with all her might. However, the extremely realistic feeling made her fall to the ground in shock. When she fell to the ground just now, the sharp pain from her crotch made her grimace in pain. She lowered her head and groped around the area of pain, only to feel two unfamiliar, soft things. The pain was indescribable because it was an unprecedented experience. An indescribable pain spread to the root of his thigh. Perhaps this was the pain in the balls that men often talked about. It was really painful, so much so that his mind went blank for a moment, and he couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Liang Yin pulled open her pants and took a look inside. Suddenly, she sucked in a breath of cold air. She was so shocked that her eyes widened. At first glance, she couldn't believe it, so she really reached out to touch it. The soft touch was unbelievably real. Furthermore, as she touched it, the item in her hand quietly changed. Chapter 3795. In the hospital, Hua Jin woke up slowly. What he saw was a snow-white world and a ward filled with disinfectant. He woke up amidst a cacophony of voices. When he opened his eyes, he saw an 4 drip hanging on the 4 stand. Then, the nurses surrounded him. Seeing that he had woken up, one of the nurses said excitedly, "He's awake! He's awake! You're finally awake!" Hua Jin furrowed his eyebrows and opened his mouth. His nostrils and throat were in extreme pain. In his hazy vision, he saw a doctor walking over and asking anxiously, "Young lady, how are you feeling? Are you still feeling unwell?" "Young lady." Hua Jin opened his mouth and frowned unhappily. Although there were many people who would subconsciously mistake him for a woman when they saw him in the past. However, he was lying in the hospital now. No matter how bad the medical staff were, they should have some basic physiological knowledge, right? Hua Jin closed his eyes and felt that his throat was extremely dry. He cleared his throat subconsciously, but suddenly heard a strange sound. Cough, cough. It was a crisp sound, but it was a soft sound that only a woman could make. His eyes widened abruptly, and he sat up on the hospital bed like a carp. He looked around blankly and opened his mouth. Suddenly, he saw a blank face reflected in the doctor's glasses. The focus in Hua Jin's eyes instantly froze. He furrowed his brows and suddenly leaned forward towards the doctor. Seeing his abnormal reaction, the doctor also came over, puzzled. Hua Jin suddenly reached out and held the doctor's face with a smack. The doctor was so shocked that he trembled and almost lost his balance. Facing the doctor's glasses, Hua Jin finally saw his own face clearly. No, rather than saying that it was his face, it was more accurate to say that it was an unfamiliar face, a woman's face. It was not unfamiliar. Where had he seen this face before? However, the most important question was, why did he become a woman? Hua Jin reached out and touched his face in front of the glasses. The woman in the glasses had the same reaction. This was too surreal. He had become a woman. Hua Jin was dumbfounded. Seeing that his series of reactions were too abnormal, the doctors looked at each other nervously. What happened? There seems to be something wrong with the patient's mind. Hua Jin suddenly smiled stiffly. Yes, I must be dreaming. He pulled up the blanket and calmly laid down on the hospital bed. However, just as he laid down, the back of his hand pressed against his chest. The strange softness made him sit up in shock. My breasts? He lowered his head in horror and rubbed his chest with both hands. The world in front of him started to twist and spin. Calm down. Hua Jin held his head and kept reminding himself. Calm down. Calm down. You must calm down. Liang Yin, who was standing in front of the mirror, took a deep breath. She held the mirror tightly, ignoring the fact that she was drenched. Even though she had been standing in front of the mirror for a long time, she still couldn't calm her rapid heartbeat. It was too unreal. Was she dreaming? However, according to a normal scientific explanation, it was impossible for a soul to be exchanged. Chapter 3796. Therefore, she must be dreaming. Liang Yin gently rubbed her chin and came to a conclusion. Since it's a dream, then let nature take its course. Just as well, I'll experience what it feels like to transform into a man. She picked up the towel beside her and was about to walk towards the bathroom. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. She turned around in confusion and walked towards the door. When she opened the door and saw the handsome young man standing at the door, her eyes lit up in an instant. Tang, the young man at the door, smiled politely and humbly. Senior Hua Jin, I heard that you seem to have accidentally fallen into the lake. I was a little worried, so I came to take a look. Tang Yu, Liang Yin excitedly clasped her fists and looked at Tang Yu eagerly like an infatuated fan. Tang Yu, on the other hand, was really shocked. In his impression, Hua Jin had always been a cold and aloof person on set. After filming, he rarely stayed on set. It was said that he had a close relationship with the wife of the chairman of Xingyu Financial Group, the former Double Best Actress award winner, Yun Shishir. The two of them addressed each other as brother and sister. In the current entertainment industry, Hua Jin was considered a popular young actor. His appearance was more exquisite and beautiful than a woman's, coupled with his extraordinary acting skills, established his unshakable status as a young actor in ancient costumes. Therefore, some ancient costume dramas were willing to take the risk of breaching the contract to wait in line for Hua Jin's schedule. This was because some of the original works had a deadline on the contract. If they did not start filming within 5 years, then they would not wait for the deadline. From this, it could be seen that the influence of Hua Jin's fans was great. However, Tang Yu's performance in the crew had always been lukewarm. After all, Tang Yu and Hua Jin were not on the same level. However, now, this man who always felt unattainable was suddenly like a young girl clenching her small fists and her eyes full of admiration for him. Tang Yu, I'm your fan. Tang, Yu was a little flattered. He said a little awkwardly, Really? But I haven't officially debuted yet. This TV series is my work. Liang Yin said, seriously, although you haven't debuted yet, I've been paying attention to you for a long time. From the moment you debuted as a model to the auditions, and before that, you were a book model for many novels. You are the book model in the original novel of Heavy Snow. You are the one who played the role of Fox Emperor Fengji. Tang Yu was stunned. It turned out that why was Senior Hua Jin so concerned about him? He even knows that I was once a book model for Heavy Snow? It can't be. Tang Yu was a bit confused and couldn't react. Actually, I think that you should be the real male lead of Demon Eyes. I'm guessing that Hua Jin was able to become the male lead because of some shady dealings and unspoken rules. Tang Yu stared at him as if he had seen a ghost. Who would say that there was definitely something shady about being the male lead? Tang Yu felt that the way he opened the door must be wrong. Why was Hua Jin in front of him? It was as if he was possessed by a ghost. It was too strange. Senior Hua Jin, are you okay? While Tang Yu was in a daze, Liang Yin was looking at him with infatuation. God, little brother Tang, you was so handsome no matter how she looked at him. Chapter 3797. For a long time, she could only look at him from afar, silently supporting him by buying his role-playing books and following his Weibo posts. Compared to Hua Jin, Tang Yu had been staying in the 2D fan circle. After making a name for himself as a book model, Tang Yu participated in many auditions and applied to the Film Academy. Until the audition for Demon Eyes, he was chosen by the director with his excellent performance and extraordinary talent. Plus, he was a book model in the original novel, so he had a certain fan base. Therefore, he got a supporting role. Tang Yu was flattered. After the audition, he was able to get a supporting role instead of a walk-on role without any lines. This already made him very encouraged. Liang Yin was also happy. Although she couldn't be the main lead, she was also excited that her idol, who she had been following for a long time, finally had a real work. Tang Yu, you can do it. Although you're not the male lead this time. I believe that if this TV series is aired, you'll definitely be famous. When that time comes, you'll become famous overnight, and many directors will want you to be the male lead. Tang Yu looked at Hua Jin, who was speaking in a girly tone. He always felt that this girly tone, when embraced by Hua Jin, have one point against, and feeling. Perhaps Hua Jin's appearance was too beautiful, so much so that it blurred the characteristics between genders. Tang Yu was a little shy as he thanked him. Senior Hua Jin, I'm very encouraged by your words. But do you want to take a shower first? I see you're all wet. Tang Yu, Liang Yin suddenly stretched out her small hand carefully and gathered her courage to ask, Can I touch your hand? When Tang Yu heard this, he didn't know why, but he inexplicably got goosebumps. Hearing this from Hua Jin's mouth, he always felt strange. However, as a senior in the crew, Tang Yu didn't dare to disobey Hua Jin's request. Thus, he resisted the strange feeling and slowly raised his hand. When Liang Yin saw him raise his fair and smooth right hand, her heart suddenly started to beat with a thump, thump, thump sound. Dong, boom. Her face flushed red. She didn't dare to reach out her hand. It was hard to imagine that Tang Yu was right in front of her. How could she forget? This was a dream. She was now in Hua Jin's body. Moreover, no matter what she did in the dream, once she woke up and returned to reality, everything in the dream would not affect anything in reality. Liang Yin suddenly held his hand tightly. Gathering her courage, she clasped her fingers with Tang Yu's and pulled him into her embrace. Tang Yu was shocked. There was a height difference between Hua Jin and Tang Yu. Tang Yu's only flaw was that he was comparable to Hua Jin in terms of looks, but he was only 1.75 meters tall. When he stood next to Hua Jin, who was 1.8 meters tall, the height difference was still obvious. Therefore, with Liang Yin's tug, Tang Yu lost his balance and fell into her arms, caught off guard. Liang Yin held his face. She didn't know where she got the courage, but she closed her eyes, pressed Tang Yu against the door, and leaned over to kiss him. Oh my God. Chapter 3798. Liang Yin also felt that she had gone crazy. Otherwise, how could she have the guts to kiss the man of her dreams so directly? The former Tang Yu, for him, was unreachable. Little girls who chased after idols often secretly put postcards of their idols under their pillows. It was said that if you put a photo of your beloved under your pillow, you will meet him in your dreams. However, the frustrating thing was, no matter how many times she tried, she still didn't dream of Tang Yu. Now, she finally dreamed of him. Then, no matter what, Liang Yin must bravely put into practice what she wanted to do but didn't dare to do, and didn't have the opportunity to do so. Just that, this kiss scared Tang Yu, but it also scared her. The direct and real touch on her lips made her body even hotter all of a sudden. It was too real, as if it really happened. So much so that Liang Yin couldn't continue the kiss. She suddenly pushed Tang Yu away and looked at him in astonishment. She subconsciously stroked her slightly swollen lips because of the crush and asked in a daze, I'm not dreaming? Tang Yu looked at him in a daze, but didn't dare to say anything. He was very suspicious that there was something wrong with Hua Jin's mind. So much so that he inexplicably pulled him into his arms and inexplicably kissed him, and finally, inexplicably pushed him away. What the hell was wrong with him? It was the first time Tang Yu was kissed by a man, so he was a little embarrassed, but he was afraid of Hua Jin's position in the crew, so he didn't dare to say anything. But he saw the man in front of him suddenly raised his hand and slapped himself hard. Slap. Tang Yu was stunned. One slap wasn't enough. Hua Jin slapped himself hard in the face again. Slap. A crisp sound. The burning pain spread from the facial nerves to the brain nerves, making her fiercely react. This wasn't a dream. This was really what happened in front of her really happened. Because of that accident, she fell into the water with the real Hua Jin. Her soul called out, and her body swapped. She became Hua Jin. But what about Hua Jin? Could it be that he was now occupying her body? Senior Hua Jin, are you okay? Tang Yu asked carefully again. Liang Yin only felt dizzy. She barely held on to the doorframe and smiled weakly. I'm fine. I think something's wrong with you. Do you have a fever? I'm fine. Liang Yin no longer had the courage to look at him. Instead, she abruptly retreated and slammed the door shut. Like a zombie, she plunged into the bathroom. The bathtub was already filled to the brim and overflowing. She stepped into the bathtub and allowed the warm water to drown her completely. Oh my God! Of it! Hurry up and change back. Change back. She hoped that when she opened her eyes again, she would be Liang Yin and return to her body. She didn't want to live the rest of her life as a man. In the ward bathroom, Hua Jin sat awkwardly on the toilet, looking at his pants that were pushed down to his knees. His legs were bare. Sob, sob, sob. His xiaobao was gone. Chapter 3799. Just now, he had the urge to go to the toilet, but when he went into the bathroom, he stood in front of the toilet and opened the lid. He fumbled for a long time, but couldn't find anything. After being stunned for a long time, he realized that he was now a woman. There was no such thing as a man's crotch and penis. Although he was not used to it, Hua Jin had to accept reality. He sat on the toilet, opened his legs, and waited for a while. When he heard the pitter-patter sound, he trembled and felt inexplicably wronged. He, a straight man like a steel bar, actually called out to his soul and changed into a woman's body. The problem wasn't this woman the one who made a big mistake during the visit? Tang Yu's diehard fan, and he didn't know if it was because of her young age, but it looked like she hadn't fully developed yet. Her breasts weren't particularly plump, and her legs were straight and slender, as thin as a bamboo pole. He couldn't help but miss the 8-pack abs and the Apollo's belt that he worked so hard to develop. No, he couldn't sit still and wait for death. He had to find a way as soon as possible. Hua Jin quickly calmed down. Now, the only way was to find Liang Yin as soon as possible. If he guessed correctly that Liang Yin should be in his body now, in his vague memory, he seemed to see his original body wrapped in a thick blanket and sent back to the hotel. Based on this, he could infer that his original body was fine. His current body was in the hotel next to the set. But now, with his identity as Liang Yin, it was obviously a little difficult to sneak into the hotel and see Liang Yin, who had become Hua Jin. He was filming in the set, so it wasn't a big show. But when he went out, he was protected by 4 bodyguards. The hotel was also monitored 24 hours a day. At the end of the promenade, there were bodyguards from the crew responsible for the safety of the artist staying in the hotel. Not to mention him, even the most experienced paparazzi couldn't sneak in, unless he could turn into a fly. Otherwise, there was no way he could sneak into the hotel. Looking for an agent? He had an agent's phone number? No, the company had given him a new manager, so they were close. If he suddenly told him that he was Hua Jin and that he had swapped bodies with that girl named Liang Yin because of an accident, that manager would definitely think that he was a lunatic or a diehard fan who wanted to sneak into the cast, right? They would definitely treat him as a dangerous person and report him to the police. What should he do? Now, there was no way for him to get in touch with Liang Yin, nor was there any way for him to sneak into the film crew. Did he have to lie in the hospital and wait for Liang Yin to come looking for him? What if Liang Yin didn't come looking for him? After all, this stupid woman was Tang Yu's diehard fan. Once she got used to his body, she would be able to live intimately with the crew and Tang Yu. In that case, she wouldn't easily return his body, right? Most importantly, he would have an important scene soon, and this was the most important part of the entire script, that Liang Yin was not an actress, and if she acted on camera, she would definitely mess it all up. Hua Jin had a headache and frowned. He only felt that the future was uncertain